Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable, see playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 141, Face to the Fight. After witnessing what had happened, Zen came up with an idea. He took the opportunity to summon the life energy in his body. He waved his fist as he shouted, "Ogres shaking the world." When the black shadow formed by the demonic life energy punched the giant hawk, the color of the hawk began to change from gray and brown to black. A smile appeared on Zen's face. He hooked his finger at the hawk and watched as the bird flew to him and settled on his shoulder under his instruction. "Hey, young man," the illuminating soul realm master who had summoned the giant hawk shouted as he pointed at Zen. "Haha, you'd better mind yourself." Seymour ignored what the man said and continued to chase the illuminating soul realm master with the jade sword in his hand. The person who survived the battle would get everything in the fairy palace. Even if all opponents survived, the person with the rightful claim over the contents of the fairy palace was driven to kill his opponents as he didn't want to share the benefits with the others. After all, greed and selfishness are innate human qualities. Zen walked on the edge of the pavilion with the giant hawk on his shoulder. He didn't intend on participating in the fight at this time. If someone's life vitality avatar came close to him, Zen would instruct the black hawk on his shoulder to devour that person's life vitality. After a short while, the black hawk began to grow in size. Soon, it expanded to over 30 feet in height. What a giant monster! The hawk was so big that it couldn't rest on Zen's shoulder any longer. Therefore, Zen ordered it to hover around and wait for his command. Those illuminating soul realm masters whose life vitality Zen had devoured were shocked and confused. However, because they were fighting with other masters who were at the same refining grade as them, they couldn't shift their attention to Zen. They watched helplessly as their life vitality avatar was consumed. Ah! Ah! A miserable shriek filled the pavilion as another illuminating soul realm master was killed. A colorful spear had pierced his body. Of course, the owner of the colorful spear was an illuminating soul realm master too. Not far from them, two illuminating soul realm masters were hunting Sandra with the same long-handled broadswords in their hands. They were most likely twin brothers as not only did they have the same weapons in their hands, but their clothes were similar. Most importantly, they shared the same facial features. In spite of her wisdom, Sandra was not good at attacking. Under the attack of the two brothers, she seemed to be losing ground. "Sandra, don't run, you'd better take off all your clothes and let us have some fun. The place is so small. Where will you run to?" The twin brothers bullied and insulted Sandra as they chased after her. Finally, the twin brothers had cornered Sandra. With no way out, she shouted angrily, "If you dare to do anything to me, word of your deeds will spread. Then even the Yu clan will not be able to save your lives." However, the twin brothers didn't care about her warning at all. "Do you think anyone will live to talk about what we do today?" A smug smile spread on their faces as the brothers replied. Sandra's face darkened as regret filled her. She remembered the young man in the mask who had reminded her not to move the fifth statue. He must know something, she thought. Unfortunately, she didn't have the chance to undo her actions. While being hunted by the twin brothers, she noticed that the young man in the mask had used a special method to swallow others' life vitality. Maybe he can help me. Thinking about this, she looked around for Zen. Her beautiful eyes were filled with despair. When she found Zen, she waved to him. Soon, life vitality gushed out from her body. After a short while, a huge blue light ball appeared over Zen's head. Zen had seen such a light ball before. He remembered that to prevent the lightning leopard from being affected by the giant puppets, the long-haired woman named Sandra had wrapped it with the light ball. Why is she gathering so much life vitality? Is she transferring her life vitality to me? Wondered Zen. Then he turned to Sandra and saw her nod at him. After that, she burned all the remaining life vitality in her body and then exploded with a loud booming sound. "What a pity, she would rather die than let us have fun," one of the twin brothers said sadly with a shake of his head. Just then, he heard a gust of wind behind him. With a puff, a knife pierced his chest. He looked at the broadsword and found it belonged to his younger brother. He turned around and stared at his brother with disbelief on his face. Why did you kill me? The younger brother shook his head and said, sorry. Since only one person can survive today, I didn't want you to become my last rival. I'll take care of our parents. Zen couldn't help but sigh at the action of the younger twin brother. If the long-haired woman had trusted him, these illuminating soul realm masters wouldn't have killed each other. Now, they were caught in a battle to the death and had no choice but to kill each other. From what he had seen, Zen understood that there was no basic trust, not even between brothers. Seeing that the blue light ball formed by Sandra's life vitality before her death hadn't disappeared, Zen commanded the bird in silence. The black hawk shrieked as it flew toward the blue light ball. After transforming the blue light ball into demonic life energy, the black hawk grew even bigger. Zen wasn't eager to join the fight. He stood still and waited for a chance. When the desperate melee had been triggered, everyone was connected by a thin stream of life vitality. Since there were many people at the beginning, this life vitality had been quite disorganized. However, as the battle continued, more and more illuminating soul realm masters were killed. The life vitality stream connecting a person to the other participants would break after his death. Now, only 3 connected streams of life vitality were left. They linked Zen with the other 2 illuminating soul realm masters, Seymour and an old man with a dragon head stick in his hand. As Zen watched, Seymour fought the old man fiercely. Since they had managed to survive to the end, both Seymour and the old man must be outstanding in terms of wisdom and competence. Both opponents knew that only one of them could survive to the end and that the survivor would become the owner of the Fairy Palace treasure house. The young man in the mask who had been watching them fight had only reached a half step into the nature level, so they were not afraid of him at all. Now, since they were just one step away from success, the fighting between these 2 illuminating soul realm masters increased in intensity. The raging life vitality burned crazily and its impact could be felt across all corners of the pavilion. Even Zen, who was watching from a distance, could feel it. To protect himself, Zen stood behind the Black Hawk. Bang, bang, bang. Hearing several loud explosions, Zen walked out from behind the Black Hawk. As the burning life vitality faded, he saw Seymour standing with the jade sword in his hand. He looked utterly bedraggled with torn clothes and burnt hair. Seymour cursed as he limped, "Idiot! Did you think I would die with you, old mongrel? Dream on." Just then, Seymour realized that a stream of life vitality still bounded his chest. He had spent all his energy in fighting the old man and had forgotten that there was still a rival in the pavilion. It came to Seymour that he needed to fight the young man in the mask. However, the thought didn't worry Seymour. A relaxed expression replaced the confusion Seymour felt when he saw the life vitality around his chest. To him, a young man who had just reached a half step into the nature level was nothing more than a little beetle. Although he was badly injured, Seymour was confident that he would be able to crush the little beetle. "Young man, you have 2 choices. Either you commit suicide, or you die by my hand. You'd better choose suicide so that you do not waste my time. Otherwise, as punishment, you'll suffer a lot before you die." With that, Seymour gradually walked closer to Zen. Zen narrowed his eyes and replied, "What if I don't choose any of them?" Seymour shook his head and shouted, "You don't have a third choice." Ha ha ha. Zen suddenly burst into laughter. "Who do you think you are? Why should you decide my future? I have a third option. I will kill you." With that, Zen reached out, and the power of the phoenix crystal in his right hand was injected into the body of the Black Hawk beside him. After absorbing the power, the speed of the Black Hawk increased tenfold. Then it flew toward Seymour. Seymour had already noticed the Black Hawk standing beside Zen. Not only had it increased in size after swallowing countless life vitality, but its power was also astonishing. Thinking about this, fear coursed through Seymour. However, he reminded himself that the person controlling the Black Hawk was only a young man at a half step into the nature level. With the control ability of a person at a half step into the nature level, the Black Hawk would have no threat to him at all. Since practitioners who were at a half step into the nature level had not learned how to transform the life energy in their body into life vitality yet, they were unable to skillfully control a life vitality avatar. Therefore, even if the Black Hawk were significantly powerful, it couldn't match Seymour, who could move as quickly as a ghost. However, to Seymour's surprise, when the Black Hawk was infused with demonic life energy combined with the power of the Phoenix Crystal, its speed had increased tenfold. With a whir, the Black Hawk turned into a strong wind and gushed toward Seymour. Although Seymour had been injured badly when he was fighting the old man, as an illuminating soul realm master, his speed and strain capacity were much better than an average person's. Even though he was limping, Seymour still managed to dodge the Black Hawk's attack. Your Black Hawk is truly remarkable. It has accumulated such tremendous power so quickly. Even I can't compare with it. However, although very fast, its speed is still not enough. You want to rely on this Black Hawk to defeat me? Dream on. Seymour's eyes glittered as he shouted at Zen. Then, he threw himself into the air at an extremely high speed and swung his jade sword at Zen. If an illuminating soul realm master tried, he could reach incredibly high speeds. With a blink of an eye, Seymour, who had been some distance away from Zen, narrowed the gap between them to such an extent that he was now less than 3 feet away. Wow, so fast! Zen shouted in shock. He immediately activated the Phoenix Crystal in his right arm. Then his speed suddenly increased tenfold. When supplemented by the momentary burst of power from his legs, Zen was able to push himself more than 100 feet away. Thus, he narrowly dodged Seymour's sword. Zen was at a half step into the nature level, so he could neither burn his life vitality nor fly. Whereas, Seymour could do both of these. Seeing that his target had run away, Seymour gave chase. As Zen was unable to fly like Seymour, he was inevitably at a disadvantage. Chapter 142, Seymour took his own life. Although Zen could borrow the energy from the Phoenix Crystal to improve his speed and avoid Seymour's attack, he knew that he would end up being beheaded by Seymour if he wouldn't fight back. I can't hide forever. I must fight back, he thought as he dodged an attack from Seymour. Before the attack, Zen planned to kill Seymour using the assimilation attack of the demonic life energy. But he realized that his opponent was not an ordinary nature creature but an illuminating soul realm master. If only the giant Black Hawk can hit Seymour, I might have a chance to win this battle. But dang, he moves so fast. My Black Hawk can't do anything to him at his speed. What should I do? Zen thought anxiously. While Zen was lost in his thoughts, Seymour drew his sword and attacked him. With the burning life vitality on his back, Seymour cast a shadow that grew bigger as he got closer to Zen. The growing dark figure awakened Zen from his deep thoughts, but before he could figure out what was happening, he felt a sharp pain on his shoulder. What the heck? Despite the damage he made to Zen, Seymour was disappointed at the result of his attack. Although his sword had no cutting edge, it was still a mid-grade spiritual weapon. He intended to cut off Zen's shoulder first before finally cutting his body in half. Unexpectedly, when his sword hit Zen's body, he felt a tremendous resistance. That's a surprise. But your bones can't be that hard. There must be something protecting your body, Seymour, floating in the air, said to Zen directly. I guess I just need to chop your body bit by bit. At that moment, Zen already had spiritual textures on his chest. His body had become a middle-grade spiritual weapon and become stronger. However, no matter how strong his body was, he could still feel the pain that Seymour's sword left on his shoulder. If he couldn't kill this man today, he would be the one to die. No more hiding. Hiding won't keep me alive and won't certainly kill this ferocious man. If I want to kill him, then I should be fiercer than him. Zen thought to himself. Stop trying. You won't defeat me even if you reach the natural level and use your life vitality. You won't stand a chance against me even if I am injured. Seymour said. The cyan life vitality on his back suddenly began to burn violently. He transformed into a cyan line and dashed towards Zen again. Stop dodging, Zen commanded himself. He stood his ground with determination in his eyes. I will do everything to defeat him even if it costs me my life. More than 100 dragon scales lit up simultaneously in Zen's body, while the broken flying blade flew towards Seymour. After that, Zen controlled the Black Hawk and it flew towards him. Shashing, Seymour dodged the surprise attack from the broken flying blade. He had his sword in his hands and was ready to attack Zen in an instant. He was aiming for his neck so he could cut his head off. No matter how hard your bones are, I can cut you into pieces. I am an illuminating soul realm master and I can defeat you. Seymour thought. Bam, bash. Seymour instantly attacked Zen, but instead of dodging it, the latter used his bare hands to hold the blade. The blade pierced through Zen's flesh and got stuck in his bones. Blood flowed from his wound to the sword. At that moment, Zen had already activated over 100 dragon scales and grasped Seymour's sword like a powerful giant. How is that even possible? Seymour tried to pull his sword out from Zen's hands but failed. He didn't expect that Zen could become stronger and tougher in an instant. Dang it, a man half-step into the nature level could not have such great power. Seymour tried to pull his sword out again with all his strength and it moved a few inches out. The blade cut between Zen's arms and ribs causing more blood to spatter. But Zen had no intention to let it go. His eyes were glowing with determination to win this fight. I've been in the life and death situations before and this one is no different. Whether I live or die, I shall give my all into this fight. Seymour tried to draw the sword out of Zen's body, but still to no avail. At the same time, the huge black hawk was flying towards him fast. He started to get anxious. He fought many battles to get to where he was today. Although his opponent was only a half step into the nature level, Seymour still didn't belittle him. Every attack he made towards Zen was with full force and he didn't show any mercy. When he knew that there was no way he could retrieve his sword from Zen's body, he gave up and stepped back. Zen slyly smiled and said, "You're backing out. It's too late." A brown spiritual thorn popped up behind him and stabbed Seymour's head. Seymour became an illuminating soul realm master through hard work. He not only trained his body but also refined his soul with secret methods. Zen's spiritual thorn suddenly appeared out of nowhere and stabbed Seymour, but it didn't affect him at all. He might be in pain but didn't fall in agony like any other ordinary soldiers. The attack distracted Seymour for a moment. And at that moment, the giant Black Hawk flew down on him from the sky. After he recovered from pain caused by the spiritual thorn, Seymour slowly came back to his senses. Just as when he was about to step back and take cover, he realized that the Black Hawk with the Phoenix crystal energy was only a few feet away. Given that he had no time to react, he shouted, "Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier." Seymour wasn't good at using any enchanted barrier, however, he would usually use one to save his life in times like this. He didn't use this trick since he became an illuminating soul realm master, and he didn't think he would use it again to deal with a half-step into the nature level. An oval-shaped, green enchanted barrier wrapped Seymour. Bang! It was just about the right time when the Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier completely wrapped Seymour. The Black Hawk hit it with huge demonic life energy. The Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier was stable, and it successfully protected Seymour from the attack of the Black Hawk. Seymour smiled when he saw that his enchanted barrier successfully blocked out the purplish-black life energy. Although he almost lost the battle because of his own negligence, he was glad to be still alive. That was close. For now, I must protect myself first, but my next attack will surely kill him. Seymour stayed inside of the translucent, Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier, with fury in his eyes. I will never let him die easily. I will torture him until he bleeds to death. This Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier is as strong as Yolanda's enchanted barriers, Zen thought. He pulled out the sword from his ribs and threw it back, and the sword fell onto a huge pillar of the pavilion. As he endured the pain of his body, he activated the emerald crystal and hit the Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier. Try as you might, but it won't work. Even an illuminating soul realm master cannot break my Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier, so how can a half-step to the nature level defeat me in this? Seymour laughed hysterically, but his laugh broke off quickly. Zen's attack left a red crack on his Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier. The lad then swung his fist and slammed onto the crack again. Crack! The cracks on Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier were getting larger. At the same time, the red energy was slowly penetrating through the cracks. Seymour wanted to activate his life vitality to repair the cracks, but the red energy was stopping him. No, this can't be happening. This is impossible. Seymour screamed when he realized that the red energy was penetrating his Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier. He could imagine the fate he was about to face once the enchanted barrier broke. I don't want to die. Let me go, please. I promise I won't hurt you again. Seymour pleaded. Standing just outside the Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier, and looking at Seymour's pathetic face, Zen replied coldly, "That's not what you just said earlier. Please, I had no idea how strong you were until this happened." Seymour continued to plead, "I really don't want to die. I can't die. But you forget this." Zen pointed at Seymour, "There could only be one winner in the desperate melee." The Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier soon became unstable as was fully covered with red cracks. Clack! And when it couldn't bear the pressure, the Blue Jade Enchanted Barrier finally broke into pieces like glass. Seymour tried to escape when the enchanted barrier broke to avoid the attack from the Black Hawk. But just as he was about to dash out, there was a dull thud. Seymour's eyes widened in horror, and the pain was written all over his face. There was a hole in Seymour's head and a lot of blood was coming out of it. And he fell to the ground lifeless. The broken flying blade was there all along. Zen threw it outside the enchanted barrier in advance to stop Seymour if he ever tried to escape. In other words, Seymour took his own life. Seymour died and the battle finally ended. After Zen's life energy vanished, he descended slowly to the ground. Chapter 143, The Trial in the Fairy Palace. Generally, it would be quite hard for Zen to defeat an illuminating soul realm master, simply because being half-step into the nature level was far from an illuminating soul realm master's skills. In the battle to the death, Zen wouldn't have won if Seymour hadn't been badly injured. Even for today, it was a Pyrrhic triumph for Zen. But in any case, no matter how hard it was, Zen had persisted until the end. Just in that moment, a series of dull sounds came from the 8 diagrams. Zen looked up at the source of those sounds and saw that the statues had slowly moved away from the characters and finally returned to their original forms. When Zen didn't sense any danger from the statues' movements, he sat still on the ground to recover. After a short while of rest, he stood up. His eyes scanned all the bodies of the illuminating soul realm masters, and a sigh couldn't help but escape from his lips. If only they had believed him, the situation wouldn't have escalated out of their control. Ah, time can't be reversed. They might never believe me in such a zero-sum game anyway, Zen thought as he sighed again. He bent down and started to pick up the weapons in their unmoving hands. These weapons were of high value and strength, and among them were quite a lot of low-level spiritual weapons, a small number of medium-level spiritual weapons, and even a top-grade one. Since all of them were dead, the weapons now all belonged to Zen. He carefully collected all the weapons and other valuable items and stored them into his space ring. Before he proceeded to the statues, he bent over the deceased bodies of his rivals and stood in silent tribute for a while. After a few moments, he went and moved the statues based on the method recorded by Chase. 3 for heaven, murmured Zen, and then he pushed 3 statues toward heaven. 6 for earth, then, he pushed the other 6 statues toward earth, accordingly. For the water is, for the fire is, the last one is. One by one, Zen had pushed all the statues to their corresponding positions as stated in Chase's record. After all of the movements were completed, the 8 diagrams engraved on the ground slowly started to turn. The outer ring of the 8 diagrams turned several times until a clear sound of gear transmission could be heard. Brum. At this point, it seemed that the outer ring's cogwheel had geared towards the inner ring of the 8 diagrams. After the gassy sound stopped, the inner ring started to rotate this time. Brum. The other sound of the gear resonated again from the inner ring. The 2 sounds had Zen withhold his breath, and his eyes were closely transfixed on the 8 diagrams. He was so engrossed in the observation that he didn't even blink. It didn't take long before the 8 diagrams flashed rays of white light. Oh yeah, I made it, Zen mentally exclaimed. He couldn't hide the utter delight that sparkled in his eyes. When the euphoria passed, he started to wonder what would happen next after the 8 diagrams had been opened. His heart fluttered wildly in his ribcage as he scrutinized every movement of the 8 diagrams. Although he closely monitored its actions, he was still on high alert for any potential attacks. The white light gradually faded away after a while, and then a human-shaped figure appeared in the center of the 8 diagrams. Zen watched the figure carefully, and upon closer look, he found that this human-shaped figure was not a real human. It was a puppet, but as far as Zen was concerned, this puppet was the only normal thing in this fairy palace. It looked like the human-shaped puppet was of a human's average height, much like Zen. He finally stopped watching the puppet closely and waited for its next move. After a while, the puppet began to speak in a low but excited voice. 3,000 years. I haven't seen a human for 3,000 years. Finally, one person appeared and opened the 8 diagrams. His rich tones echoed throughout the rocky walls. The puppet's words took Zen by surprise. The puppet can speak, he thought. Even though the puppet didn't seem to show any aggressive behavior, Zen stayed alert and kept his distance. It seemed that aside from being able to talk, the puppet could also express excitement. Who are you? Zen asked carefully in a calm, polite manner. Although Zen guessed he was a puppet, he still chose to show his full respect to him. The puppet was mildly astonished before he answered. Me. Wow, my name. Oh, you can call me Saul. Yes, I am Saul. I am the servant of this fairy palace, he said. It seemed that the puppet hadn't talked for a long time. So, His words came out a little too excitedly and he appeared quite talkative. In turn, Zen nodded courteously. Saul, thanks. Would you mind if I ask, are you a human or a puppet? I am sorry if my question would offend you, Zen said. Now, it wasn't the first time that Zen saw a puppet. However, even those best craftsmen could only make puppets that could only walk and move under their master's commands. Such a puppet that could speak and feel like a normal human was indeed rare to see or hear. So, it was no wonder that Zen suspected Saul was a human in disguise. The human-like puppet Saul's eyes were slightly downcast before he spoke. Me, of course, I am a puppet, but how I wish I could be a real human. Then I can become old with time and die when the life ends. Not like now, living forever and ever is the greatest torture, he lamented. His previous excitement was now replaced by sorrow and grief, and Saul's mood became sour and gloomy. Upon hearing his answer, Zen felt a little confused. We practice martial arts to seek immortality, and you have reached our ultimate objective and now live in this fairy palace. Why are you looking for death? I could not understand that, he asked. In turn, Saul only smiled sadly and sighed. If you were trapped in one place, every day without company, you could only talk to yourself, you would finally not want to talk or even just forget how to speak. I have been alone for thousands of years and would live lonely for the next few thousand years or even longer. Will you still want to live immortally? Or will you look for death, which might be a relief and an end to your current lonely life? Saul's gripes made Zen fall into silence. He did have a fair point. To be alone for thousands of years like Saul would make immortality a great torture. And death might be the next best thing. However, Zen was a human who understood the feeling of loneliness, but Saul was a puppet. So, he asked again, Saul, you are only a puppet, how could you feel lonely? Saul just shook his head. Even though my body was made to be a puppet, my inner soul was an abstract from a human soul. Thus, in some words, I am also a human, with human feelings and soul, he answered. Abstract human soul to refine a puppet. That was so strange that Zen had never heard about it. Such technique was so magical that it was almost unbelievable. When Saul saw Zen's shocked expression, he didn't mind as if he was used to such a thing. Anyway, I have finally seen you after 3,000 years. I finally saw the fourth person appearing here after waiting for 3,000 years, he continued. The fourth one? Zen asked. Even though he was still in shock, he did not miss the key words in Saul's words. So there are other people who have also been here. In the fairy palace? Zen asked some more. Nodding in agreement, Saul explained, of course, there were other people who had been here and opened the 8 diagrams. But they all failed and died. So, I hope that you can succeed. I do not want to wait any longer. I've had enough of it. All failed, all died. What does that mean? Zen asked with a frown on his face. It would seem that he would not like the things that were about to happen. If you want to be the master of the fairy palace, you have to pass the test. Of course, there are many dangers in the test, and if you fail, you will die naturally. Saul explained slowly. Zen's eyes slowly widened, and a lump formed in his throat. I will die if I fail. Then, can I choose not to attend the test and leave now? Zen stared at Saul and asked hopefully. At this, Saul simply smiled. Ha, 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 he chuckled. It is okay to give up according to the regulations. My powerful master won't force others to become the new master of his fairy palace. Besides, only a truly qualified and contented man could inherit his property. However, I do not want to wait any longer, he added. Zen pondered over Saul's words for a bit. Ah, in that case, I have to attend the test anyway. It seems that Saul has had enough lonely time and he would definitely force me to attend the test, even though the master of the fairy palace provided 2 options, he thought. The hesitation in Zen's face did not escape Saul's gaze, and he went on to say, rest assured. In order to make sure you can pass the test, I will try my best to help you and give you guidance when I am permitted. I have waited for thousands of years and finally got you here. Even though the test is very dangerous, I will do my utmost to help you. Saul said. When Zen felt that he had no other choice, he simply sighed. Well, okay, I understand now. And how can I pass the test? When can I start? Where is the test place? Zen asked. With a wave of his hand, Saul said, come with me. He turned around and walked to the back. Just then, those pink enchanted barriers around the pavilion slowly faded away. At this point, Zen looked at Saul who walked slowly ahead of him and thought about whether it would be better for him to use this opportunity to escape. As long as he could run to the jade path with his fastest speed, he could return back to the outer world. Those nature creatures waiting outside would not pose any great threats to him. However, after having thought about it for one more time, Zen gave up his idea of escape. It had been hard for him to get inside the fairy palace and even harder for him to survive after the desperate fight with those powerful foes a while ago. How could he go back without anything gained? That would be very disappointing for him. After he had collected his thoughts, Zen stepped forward and kept pace with Saul. It seemed that the human puppet didn't notice Zen's inner mental struggle and simply took Zen to the other jade path. This particular jade path led to another area in the fairy palace. When Zen and Saul stepped on the jade path, those fishes gathered once again. Whop! One of the large fishes jumped out of the water and lunged towards the two of them. Look out, Zen warned. His eyes darted left and right to spot any attacks. He had seen the strength of these fishes before. The way they tore and completely ate up one powerful man of the illuminating soul realm in just a few minutes was still fresh in his mind. However, his worries turned out to be useless. Saul turned his head towards the fish coming at him. He stretched out his hand, and then his fingers elongated like withered wood to a few meters long. When his fingers made contact with the fish, he clenched his fingers and abruptly inserted them into the fish's body. The goldfish could only helplessly flap around its tail in the air but couldn't escape from Saul's hand. Saul then slowly wrapped his hand around the fish and sliced it into pieces. The once huge, powerful koi fish now looked like small, normal fish in Saul's hand. After that, he threw away the fish's remnants into the water. These goldfishes have lived here for such a long time that they have forgotten the rules. Several thousand years ago when Master was still here, these goldfishes were much more obedient than they are now, Saul said as he slowly withdrew his fingers. To see such a scene filled Zen's heart with fright. He felt lucky that he did not choose to escape. Otherwise, he might have been torn to pieces by Saul, just like the goldfish. Although Saul was a puppet, the strength he showed just now indicated that it would be easy for Saul to kill him in few seconds. Even the powers of those illuminating soul realm masters could not match that of Saul. That goldfish that was cut to pieces immediately attracted other goldfishes. They fought each other for the flesh and bones of the dead goldfish, even though this fish was their companion just few minutes ago. For a time, the originally small and calm pool waters rippled and rose up in waves, like the sea during a tsunami. Fortunately, these goldfishes were not so stupid to challenge Saul and Zen again, after seeing that their compatriot had been cut into pieces just now. They just stayed beneath the water on both sides of the pool but dare not jump out to attack Saul and Zen. Without the goldfishes' attacks now, the travel along the jade path became safe just like it was a normal path. However, as Saul walked rather slowly, it still took them some time to reach the end of the path until they crossed a door to another yard. The door creaked a bit when Saul opened it. Upon stepping inside the courtyard, Zen noticed that there were 3 puppets laid on the edge of the courtyard. However, these 3 puppets were not so delicate as Saul. When Saul saw that Zen's eyes were focused on those puppets, Saul explained, "You can select any one of these puppets. They are made for you." One eyebrow shot up in Zen's forehead. "What do you mean?" he asked. "If you fail in the test, I will save you and take your soul out, then seal your soul in this puppet. Then you can stay with me for a long time, as if you were not dead," Saul said as he pointed to the 3 puppets. Those souls of the failed challengers had lived here too. "However, my craftsmanship is not as good as the master's. I could only keep the soul alive in the puppet for 1,000 years, but I could not make it immortal, just as what my master did to me," he finished. Now, Zen had finally understood what Saul meant. In order to have a companion with him, Saul had made some puppets here. Those who previously broke into the fairy palace and failed the test were made into puppets. Even though Saul was not as good as his master in making the puppets, the appearance of these 3 puppets weren't so bad. They looked like they didn't have any major damages. However, the souls within the puppets had faded away after thousands of years. When Zen thought about being sealed in the puppet by Saul if he failed the test, he couldn't help but feel scared. He swallowed nervously. It would be miserable to live a lonely life in puppet for 1,000 years. Chapter 144, The Force of 100 Men. However, at this moment Zen's primary concern was revolving around what the current test was all about. "Saul, as you mentioned, this test was set by an immortal. But I'm only half step into the nature level. How could I possibly undergo that test successfully?" Zen asked with a wide frown across his face. If in fact the legendary Immortal did set all the problems which would appear in the test, let alone Zen, even the greatest masters of all times from the eastern region would probably fail it. Saul grinned upon hearing the response as he pointed to the things in the yard and said, "Look at everything in this courtyard carefully. Aren't they all over 100 times bigger than you?" Upon giving everything a second glance, Zen gave an accepting nod. It was evident that the courtyard was designed by immortals. Every wall there was over thousands of feet high, which made Zen feel like a little ant crawling on the ground as he walked through the courtyard. "Don't you think it is strange that I showed up before you in this appearance?" Saul asked again, with a wide smile still persisting on his face. The entire scene was indeed rather strange. From the moment he entered the fairy palace, all the objects were of massive proportion, except the puppet Saul who was about Zen's size. The test is designed to find the most suitable successor, so the candidate's strength is primarily taken into consideration. But obviously if the Immortal modeled the test based on his own ability and strengths, then chances are that no one would inherit the fairy palace, Saul continued in a bid to instill confidence. The test formulated only for pushing your limits. It means that the stronger a candidate is, the more difficult the test will be. If you can surpass your limits and excel your own standards, then you can pass the test. "Oh, now I understand. This is fair enough," Zen said, as he sighed in relief while his heart swelled up with adoration. The Immortal really has far-reached supernatural power and intuition. The test is tailor-made for the contestants and the best of their abilities. The desperate melee was well designed as well. The design would eliminate all unqualified competitors in the beginning, leaving behind the one true participant for the test. Then Zen moved on with Saul. Soon they were in an enormous building with a threshold at the height of a few dozen feet. Saul then crossed the threshold with a hop. Zen walked right over to the threshold, then he slammed his feet against the ground, and he came to the threshold's other side. And on the other side, Zen saw a small talisman on the ground, and Saul was standing right beside it. "Come here, stand on this talisman and begin your test," Saul said patiently. Zen found the palace like a minefield. Keeping in mind what Saul said earlier, he knew that the test would be very dangerous. If and when Zen passed the test, he would be the fairy palace's owner. Inheriting such a majestic and esteemed fairy palace would be an enormous benefit to Zen. With Zen's current strength and capabilities, he was far more superior than the other masters at the same level. He was even equipped to defeat nature creatures without much effort, but when the enemy was in the illuminating soul realm, the situation was different. For example, even though he actually did defeat Seymour today, one could not ignore that he was seriously injured too. Besides, Vale was the disciple of the Cloud sect, and was evidently more powerful than Seymour. Could Zen be his match and defeat him? To be precise, if he wanted an actual shot to save his sister, he would not only have to deal with Vale, but also many other powerful masters in Cloud sect. Internally, Zen thought he was still too weak in Cloud sect. Bearing this idea in mind, Zen, without any hesitation, placed his foot on that talisman. Not even a second after he placed his foot on the talisman that his head began to spin. The landscape around him changed within a fast flash and now Zen found himself in another world. In this new contrasting different world, bright flashes of lightning lit up the sky and meteor shower fell in the distance, sounding their presence and the ground shook in waves like those of a majestic sea. "The first thing is to test and quantify your strength," Saul's voice came through to Zen's ears. Zen very clearly understood that what he was seeing was just an illusion. But even then he could not deny that the environment looked and seemed very real, over 100 times more real than Mirage and Cloud sect's Bloody Mountain, including the wind, rain, thunder and lightning or vegetation. The fact to remember was that it was a test of strength. But Zen didn't know how his strength would be tested at this point in this unfamiliar world. He walked for a while before his eyes chanced upon a rope. There were many bare-chested men with powerful muscles standing alongside the rope. The men appeared quite burly. After counting the men standing across from him, Zen realized there were about 100 men. Humph! Upon seeing Zen approaching, the men leading the gang handed the strong rope over to Zen. Zen grabbed the rope and suddenly felt light. His vision got blurry before the landscape changed yet again. As his vision became clear again, Zen was standing on the top of a high mountain, still holding onto the rope. Those burly men were standing across him, holding the rope's other end. Between the mountain tops was a ravine. Some praying birds were circling over the cliffs, looking at Zen insidiously. It felt like they were keenly waiting for the moment he would fall into the ravine, so they could swoop in and peck at his flesh. In addition to this horrifying scene, the bottom of the mountain ravine was swirling with molten hot lava. It looks like if I fail or even flutter, I'm going to die, Zen muttered softly. Humph. The strong men across the ravine grabbed the rope, drew a circle and tied it around their shoulders. Then they motioned Zen to tie himself with the rope, just as they did by imitating their actions. As the test of strength, a tug of war. How could I possibly match the strength of 100 men all by myself? Zen, grasping the powerful men's intention and the test's concept, gently swung the rope and tied it around his shoulder in a strong loop. Then Zen tugged at the rope and nodded at those men. The test of strength had been initiated. Hey-oh! With a sudden roar, the 100 intimidating men began to pull at the rope as hard as they could. Even though Zen was well prepared, he suddenly lost his strong footing due to the sheer force of the 100 mighty men and slowly slid toward the cliff's edge. After being dragged 6 or 7 steps toward the opposite side, Zen put an end to it with all the strength he could muster. His feet gripped the ground, like a bull, and he stopped sliding as he adjusted to the steady position. This strength test is not so easy to pass and is deceptively tough. Zen tried to lean back, stretching the rope straight and asserting more strength. The collective strength of 100 men was so great that despite his best efforts, Zen was dragged towards the cliff's edge. Zen had not launched the power of dragon scales just as yet. He relied solely on his own strength against the strong men. He gritted his teeth, flexed every muscle and every tendon bulged. However, even with all his strength, he could not hold his ground and slid toward the cliff's edge inch by inch. This is the limit of my physical strength, Zen realized. I'm only 2 or 3 steps away from the drop. If I don't utilize the power of dragon scales, I'm afraid I will fall into the ravine. Come on, Zen shouted, and the dragon scales lit up in his head, giving off a green glow. Then, a rush of strength pushed into every muscle of his body like a sudden surge of electricity. In a flash, Zen's power had exploded beyond what he expected. Upon Zen's sudden surge of tremendous power, the rope creaked, and the 100 strong men were shocked into a movement towards the cliff's edge. Just moments before the mighty men standing across were about to fall into the ravine, they suddenly let out a roar again at the same time. Hey-oh! The 100 men simultaneously pulled the rope and withstood the test of power while stopping it from moving toward Zen. Thus, Zen and the strong men were in a match all over again. How did that happen? Zen's mind was bubbling with curiosity. Over 100 dragon scales inside his body had been ignited, and the force of each dragon scale was very terrifyingly mighty, not at the very least weaker than the strength of any man standing across him. Earlier, Zen was barely able to withstand the power of these men only based on his physical strength. So now he activated the power of dragon scales, and his power would greatly surpass that of his opponents. But with a loud yell, yet again the strong men actually steadied the rope. What did this mean? It simply meant that the strength of those men was not fixed and varied depending upon the opposition. As Zen's strength grew, so did their strength to level the field. With the rope on Zen's shoulder, Zen used his overwhelming strength to confront the strong men in the duel yet again. Neither side would budge and it grew tedious. Whenever Zen took a few steps back, the men then pulled him forward a few steps. As a result, the tug of war became like a game of seesaw, with one side retreating and the other moving forward and then vice versa. Zen's brow furrowed at the situation. It can't go on like this. Zen thought to himself. The men across him, his competitors, were not real beings, but were magically made by the owner of this fairy palace with the help of illusions. Moreover, this proved their strength was simply inexhaustible. Unlike their unwavering strength, not only would Zen's strength fail, but his dragon scales would deter after overuse and needed a little rest before he could recover. Evidently, if it went on like this, sooner or later Zen's strength would be exhausted and he would be dragged into the abyss by those men standing across him. I must win this situation as soon as possible. The more time this takes, the lesser chances I have, Zen told himself. But all of this was easier said than done. This strength test was too difficult than what he first anticipated. Boy, having a tug of war with 100 people does not require only strength, as one may think, but also skills. Saul's voice came through again, motivating him. If you had paid attention to the minute details, you'd have figured it out by now. Details. Zen was startled for a second upon listening to Saul. Yes, I can't tell you what they are. If I give you too many hints, I might be wiped out, so that's all I can say. The rest is up to you and I have said enough, Saul said in a soft, motivating tone. Details. Zen was lost in thoughts. On the face of it, the strength test seems like an unsolvable puzzle. The strength of the 100 men opposite is equal to mine each time. So, when my strength is increased 10 times, the strength of the opposite too will be increased 10 times, and when my strength is increased 100 times, the strength of the opposite will also be increased to the same level to balance the scales and make it a fair match. That is to say, no one can win the opposition. So what are these minuscule details? There are 100 mighty men. When I pull the rope hard, they too pull it with equal might. The only difference is when they all tug at the rope together they all let out a roar. Why must they always roar? The roar, this difference doesn't enhance their strength. The Immortal would not add any unnecessary element when setting the dreamland, so this was deliberately arranged and placed here. Everything has meaning and significance. The thought of that terrifying roar reminded Zen of a story he read as a child. It was the tale of Lankang River. There was a shallow section of the river which small boats could cross, but big ships could not maneuver through. In order for the big ship to pass smoothly, it must be pulled by men. Boat trackers pulled a ship along the shore with ropes on their backs, assisting the ship to move forward through the shallow water slowly yet steadily. But despite dozens of men were towing a ship, their power was uneven and insufficient. If there was no unified force, it was impossible to drag the ship deep in the mud. In order to combine the power of dozens of people, they would sing songs, which were actually some rhythmic slogans driving motivation and synchronous movements. These slogans were used to synchronize their movements and combine their forces to ensure mobility and success. At the thought of this, an idea suddenly occurred to Zen. Chapter 145, Endless Steps. The most significant difference between them was that Zen was the only one on his side, whereas there were about 100 people on his rival's side. Here, Zen had an advantage as it would be impossible for so many people to act in unison as there must be a difference among 100 people when they exerted their strength. To overcome this shortcoming, they would roar when exerting themselves, and this roaring unified their efforts. This must be the so-called details Saul mentioned. Zen was suddenly enlightened. Since Saul had reminded him, it must be the key to pass the test. Strength, unity. I must find a way to disrupt their efforts so that they are unable to exert their strength simultaneously. Zen thought. He looked at those men with a weird smile and then gradually withdrew his strength. After Zen reduced his strength by 30%, he was pulled toward the cliff edge, little by little. After moving forward a few steps, Zen suddenly applied himself. All his strength erupted in an instant. Then, he was able to drag the rope back. Hey, ha! The men roared when they found that Zen was striving to use all of his power. They deployed their strength at the same time to compete against Zen. It is just as I have thought. Zen thought with a slight smile. When the men exerted themselves, Zen withdrew his strength again. As he felt the rope loose, Zen applied more force. Because he was alone, Zen could exert or withdraw his strength freely. On the contrary, the men on the opposite side had to rely on their roaring to unify their movements. After Zen had repeatedly exerted and withdrawn his strength, the roaring rhythm of the men finally became chaotic. Hey, ha, ha, hey, everyone was roaring according to their rhythm, so their strength wasn't unified at all. Just then, Zen summoned all his strength again. Even if the total strength of these men were equal to Zen's, because they were inconsistent in utilizing their power, they seemed to be weaker than Zen. As a result, the men couldn't keep their balance any longer and slid toward the edge of the cliff, one by one. As soon as one man fell off the cliff, their team would lose 1% of their strength. When Zen deployed all his power, more than 30 men fell. The strength of the remaining 70 men was only equal to 70% of Zen's power at that moment. And so, Zen had nothing to fear. Zen felt more and more relaxed as with each exertion there were fewer people left on the other side. Finally, all 100 men had fallen into the ravine. And thus, Zen won the strength competition. After pulling the whole length of the rope to his side, Zen felt the surrounding environment change. When he looked around, Zen noticed that he was back in the hall. A smile appeared on Saul's face. Except for his lifeless breath, the puppet of the Immortal was just like a real person. Well done. Since you were able to win with the slight hint I have given you, I feel more confident in your abilities now, said Saul. You call that a slight hint? Zen asked with eyebrows raised. Saul nodded and answered, the strength test is relatively easy. If you want to be recognized by the Immortal, you have to survive the test of the soul and the spirit. It is the most important part of the tests. Soul and spirit, Zen murmured as he gazed at Saul. Zen knew very little about the soul. Oddly enough, none of the people from the eastern region had heard about this either. In fact, compared to the others in the eastern region, Zen had already learned more about the soul. He had begun to cultivate according to the book, spiritual thorn, and had now reached the state of forgetting himself. After reaching the state, Zen had won against many masters. So the soul of masters was vulnerable too. A talisman appeared as Saul pointed at the ground. The second test is a spiritual one. Now, since you have passed the test of strength, you have to take the test of the spirit. Be careful, the test is very dangerous. If you are careless, your soul will be removed. Then you will become a zombie-like idiot. Zen nodded without hesitation. Since he had passed the first test, he felt as though he should continue with the remaining tests. Before taking the second test, I want to know how many tests I have to pass, asked Zen. Hearing that, Saul flashed 3 fingers and said, 3. But, strictly speaking, there are only 2 tests. Once you pass the first 2 tests, you would have the quality to take over the fairy palace. However, the third test is very important as your performance will decide what kind of reward you will get. Reward? What will be the reward? Zen was a little surprised. Saul smiled slyly and said, I can't tell you more now. But I will share if you pass the second test. Since Zen didn't have any other questions to ask, he moved forward and stepped on the second talisman. As soon as he trod on it, Zen was transferred to the illusory again after a while of dizziness. Unlike the realm full of lightning and thunder he had been sent to previously, the current realm was very quiet. There was a heavy mist in the distance, and the sky looked a little dark. Zen was on a mountain and in front of him was a staircase with endless steps. The test of the soul is to climb this staircase. If you reach the top, you will pass the test. Saul's voice echoed across the mountain. Climbing up a staircase. It sounded too easy. However, Zen knew that the stairs couldn't be as simple as they looked. Since the first test was challenging, then the second test would undoubtedly be more difficult. Standing before the staircase, Zen looked up. There were probably tens of thousands of steps in front of him. The further up he looked, the less Zen could see. After all, the steps were so high up that they were wrapped in mist. Zen moved forward and cautiously placed his foot on the first step. A frown appeared on Zen's face when nothing happened. He gingerly took another step. Again, nothing happened. Zen began climbing up step by step at a brisk pace. In his present physical condition, ascending the staircase was as easy as walking on the ground. Even if Zen slowed his speed and climbed one step after another, he still moved up very quickly. The 200th step, the 300th step, the 800th step, the 900th step, the 999th step. Standing on the 999th step, Zen looked down and found that the steps behind him were hidden in the mist. Now he couldn't see anything except the mist and the step under his feet. A deep sense of loneliness coursed through him. There was nothing wrong with the first 1,000 steps. If I guess correctly, the real test should start from the next step. Thinking about this, Zen placed his foot on the 1,000th step. As soon as his foot touched the step, Zen felt a sharp pain. Oh, it hurts, Zen cried in a low voice. However, when he looked down, he couldn't see what had caused the pain. That's impossible, he thought. Zen then wondered what had caused the sharp pain in his foot. My skin is too tough for any ordinary sharp object to prick it. Thinking about this, Zen became more cautious. Then he took another step. Ah, he frowned and couldn't help but cry out in pain. After the pain subsided, Zen looked at the step. The moment he placed his foot down, a sharp gray thorn rose from the step and went into his foot. The gray thorn had caused the pain. Soul thorn. Zen's face turned pale in shock. Although the soul thorn was not the same as Zen's spiritual thorn, they were similar as they could attack people's soul even if their skin was hard. If Zen's soul had not been refined and strengthened by the black fire, he would have fainted from the pain of being pricked by the soul thorn. His soul was strong enough, but his face still twisted in pain, as though he had tasted a bitter melon. Zen raised his head and looked at the steps that extended to the skyline. How much pain would I have to suffer if my feet are pricked at every step I take? It seems I have no choice but. Zen suddenly leapt forward. After several jumps, he had crossed 23 steps. Although Zen was being smart by jumping, he was invariably pricked by the thorn when he did place his feet on a step. Zen gritted his teeth and continued as he rationalized that this was better than getting pricked at every step. After jumping across dozens of steps, each time he placed his foot on a step, Zen would feel the pain of his soul being attacked by the thorn. After leaping more than 10 times, his soul had been pricked more than 10 times too. Even though Zen's soul was much stronger than the average person's, he felt dizzy from the pain. Zen couldn't help but cover his head with his hands. He had to sit down and rest. Looking at the remaining steps, Zen took a deep breath. After he had recovered, Zen continued to climb. After leaping across several hundreds of steps in one breath, Zen reached the 2000th step. The moment he stepped on it, the environment around him changed. Clusters of crimson flame replaced the soul thorns. Zen guessed that they were not real flames as he couldn't feel any heat coming from them. However, when he stepped on them, Zen felt as though his soul was being grilled. He would have preferred it if they had been actual flames. After all, Zen had developed a certain resistance to fire and could even absorb their heat as he had been refined by the lotus fire, the fire of the earth's core, and the demon's holy fire. However, the flame on the step was special as it wouldn't hurt his body, but it did attack his soul. Chapter 146. Zen's Unshaken Determination. Zen's soul was getting roasted by the flames. In spite of his strong will, he couldn't bear the excruciating pain. He trembled and moaned in pain as he rolled side to side on the ground with his hands covering his head. He found it hard to stand up, let alone take another step. Zen slid on the 2000th step and eventually fell to the 1999th step. Although he had to endure the pain of the soul thorns pricking him when he went down to the 1999th step, he looked so much better. He looked up at the steps above him and sighed, "This is harder than I thought. How can I overcome these obstacles?" Zen had an iron will and never backed down from any challenges or difficulties. He triumphed over many predicaments with his perseverance. But for the first time, he doubted himself. The remarkable flame was terrifying and overwhelming. "I can't quit now even if I want to," Zen murmured. There was no way he could back out now that he was inside the fairy palace. Besides, Saul told him that he would be accepted in the fairy palace if he could pass this stage of the test. However, he couldn't even stand up steadily at the 2000th step, so how could he possibly move up another step? Zen's soul had great strength that could withstand any pain, so there was no reason he should fear being burned by the flames. His soul had been exposed to the black fire in his brain. The flame that he was now encountering was not even close to the power of the black fire. But then, Zen could not endure the pain of his soul being burned. No, it can't be like this. The soul test was indeed quite dangerous. The puzzle must be difficult, but it could not be unbreakable. There must be a way to deal with this. Zen stood at the 1999th step and thought for a while. His face lighting up with an idea, he said, "Ah! How can I be so stupid to have forgotten about the state of forgetting myself?" Back when Zen was mastering the spiritual thorn, he inadvertently discovered the state of forgetting himself. In the sphere of nothingness, his consciousness would become subtle and he could ignore himself as if becoming the second person. If he entered that state now, he could completely ignore the pain of his soul being burned. This was the only way he could think of that could help him pass the 2000th step. Thus, Zen closed his eyes and began his meditation. The moment he opened his eyes, he could feel nothing. He felt as if the world had lost ties with him, including his own body. Zen was now ready to try the 2000th step again. With this renewed determination, he said to himself, "All right. Let's do this again." In his state of forgetting himself, Zen walked up to the next step. When he finally reached the 2000th step, he felt so much better. The flame still burned his soul and he could still suffer a sting of pain. But since he entered the state of forgetting himself, he could endure the pain and ignore it completely. Now that he made a way to ignore the pain, he continued to move on and finally reached the 3000th step. As he continued to ascend, the difficulty level of every 1000 steps became higher. He might have found a way to surpass the challenge at the 2000th step by going into the state of forgetting himself. But he didn't know what was waiting for him on the 3000th step. When he took a step on the 3000th step, he waited for something to happen. But after a while, he was surprised that nothing he imagined ever happened. There was neither soul thorn nor flames that could burn souls. It felt that he was back before the 1000th step again. Zen was doubtful, it can't be this easy, can it? As he observed, the farther he got into the soul test, the harder and more complex the test would be. There was no way that they would let Zen pass the test that easily. Zen tried his luck and walked up a few more steps to see if anything would change. To his surprise, there still wasn't anything unusual. "Well, I don't know what is happening. But this must be my lucky day," Zen murmured as he went up straight. He could not comprehend what was happening with the test. If there were no more obstacles, he could finish the test in no time. But if there were, he was ready to deal with anything. After he took a dozen steps from the 3000th step, he suddenly felt a gust of wind pass through him. It was so strong that he could not see clearly. When the wind had passed, a lot of fierce creatures were approaching Zen from the higher steps. The beasts looked like the monsters crawling out of, and each seemed to be 10 times more powerful than Zen. No, they were 100 times more powerful than him. Zen got anxious at the sight of the beasts coming towards him, but he quickly calmed himself. He took a deep breath and completely shut out the fear in his heart. Looking by the beasts' appearance, Zen felt they could tear him to shreds in an instant. But since this was the soul test, the purpose of these beasts was to test his soul and will. With this thought, he knew not to be confused with appearances. They are not real. The moment I think they are, I will lose, he whispered to himself and repeated this like a mantra. Thus, he stood his ground and watched as the beasts rushed towards him. Truly enough, the beasts were not real. They passed right through Zen and instantly vanished. Excellent, you have just reached the third but most dangerous stage of this test. If you had just a hint of fear in your heart at previous stage, the beasts would have devoured you. Saul said from the outside. As long as you can go through this stage, you will be successful to pass the entire test. Fight on. Saul said. This confirmed Zen's assumption that fear would have ended his life. If he showed a little fear or violence, the beasts would devour him. Though it wasn't like the previous test where physical endurance was required, it was the most challenging for Zen. His life depended on his mindset. It was a test in between fantasy and reality. Zen admired the deity's tricky but wonderful mind for that test. Now that Zen knew the difficulty of the tests he could possibly face, he became more vigilant. After passing through that level, he continued to move up. As he took his steps, he could smell blood and the thick mist around him slowly turned blood red in color. Zen caught sight of a man in a snow-white robe. Zen could not see the man's face clearly, but he looked familiar to him, the figure at least. Father! Zen exclaimed in surprise. Zen could not be mistaken. He knew the figure very well as it was imprinted in his memory even after all these years. Mike was the name of Zen's father and he died 3 years ago. And every time Zen remembered his father, his heart was filled with endless sorrow. Until now, he had not told Yan the truth because he didn't know how. The moment he saw his father, he could not help but feel excited. He called him repeatedly, but the man didn't respond. When Zen slowly stepped forward, the man suddenly looked up at him. Zen was surprised to see a face with no flesh at all. He was stunned and froze in fear. The skeleton let out a terrible cry and suddenly attacked Zen. The skeleton was coming at him on high speed and there was no time for Zen to dodge. He suddenly felt a terrible pain as if his soul was torn apart. Ah! Zen screamed in pain as the skeleton munched on his skin. The pain of the soul being eaten was extremely excruciating. If he could not snap out of this illusion, the skeleton would eat him to death. Zen was screaming with pain when he heard Saul's voice, "Hold on to your belief." My belief? Zen mumbled. His eyes widened in bewilderment. What is my belief? Despite the pain of the skeleton munching on him, Zen reflected on his belief. Since his father's death, Zen's heart hardened like solid rock. When he encountered an illusory devil transforming into a group of fierce beasts, he was able to calm himself down and eventually pass the stage. But when the illusory devil turned into his father's image, it hit him hard. He became vulnerable. My belief is the relentless pursuit of martial arts mastery. Since I decided to follow this path, I must go on, and no one can shake my determination. At first, he couldn't figure out his belief out of the pain. But with focus, he was able to remember what he believed in and what pushed him to take the test. Even if my father stops me, I will not falter or give up. No one can ever stop me in mastering martial arts. His eyes now glowed with fortitude. The skeleton slowly weakened until it finally disappeared. Zen gasped for air and sighed with relief. If his determination wasn't firm, his soul would have been bitten to death. Without wasting any more time, Zen stood up and kept moving up. When he finally reached the top, the surroundings slowly changed and he found himself back in the hall again. Congratulations! You have passed the soul test. Now, you are considered the temporary owner of the fairy palace. Saul greeted Zen and smiled at him with excitement. Chapter 147, The Contemplation Picture. The temporary owner. Zen was curious about this title. Saul laughed. Yes, this is the rule made by the third host of the fairy palace. Then what can I do as a temporary host? Can I use anything? Zen asked. Saul shook his head. No. You can only take the last test and get a contemplation picture. What is a contemplation picture? Zen asked. He was thoroughly confused by now. Saul was curious. I don't know what world you live in. As a warrior, you don't know what a contemplation picture is. Zen had read many books, but he had never heard of the contemplation picture. So he shook his head and replied, I really don't know. Although you are only at a half step into the nature level, don't the warriors in your world have life vitality? Nobody can have life vitality avatar. I saw that many people fighting in the pavilion had life vitality avatars. A person needs a contemplation picture to have a life vitality avatar. Saul explained to Zen. This explanation only confused Zen more. The warriors in the eastern region cultivate life vitality avatar based on their cultivation method to meditate. Nobody needs a contemplation picture. Zen responded. I see, Saul nodded. In my opinion, the strength of the people at the illuminating soul realm is low, but the powerful men at the illuminating soul realm in the eastern region are much weaker than those at the same level one have seen. As they don't have a contemplation picture, their life vitality avatar is not powerful. Explain to me more clearly. If I want to have a life vitality avatar, I must have that picture, right? Zen heard Saul repeatedly emphasizing on the significance of the contemplation picture. Although he didn't quite understand it yet, in his heart, Zen felt it must be important. Saul smiled. The powerful men in the eastern region can cultivate life vitality avatar without the contemplation picture. The life vitality avatar made from their meditation can't be passed down with a foundation. So their power will be much weaker. If you can turn life energy into life vitality and gain life vitality avatar through the contemplation picture, its power will be 10 if not 100 times stronger. Zen understood what Saul said. It appeared that Saul and the host of the fairy palace did not live in this world. There was another way to cultivate in their world, and it was different from that in the eastern region. Something called the contemplation picture was needed to have life vitality avatar. In this case, how do I get the contemplation picture? Saul's explanation tempted Zen. Saul laughed. Didn't I tell you a few minutes ago? After you pass the first and second tests, you will take the third one. Your performance in the last test will decide your reward. After saying that, Saul pointed with his hand. Several lights flashed on the wall not far away, and 5 pictures appeared from nothing. Zen stared at the 5 pictures. They were blurry, and he couldn't see them clearly. These are your rewards. Each of the 5 contemplation pictures has a different power. The first one, the heavenly sword picture, is the worst, and the last one, the sun moon stars picture, is the best. Which one of these you will get depends on how many tasks you complete in the third test. If you can finish the first task, you will get the first contemplation picture. If you can complete all tasks, you will get the most powerful contemplation picture. Saul stated. Zen looked at the 5 pictures and became a little excited. I am sure to get the sun moon stars picture. But Saul shook his head. That is very difficult. I think, with your strength, you can get the second one, the 9-day cycle picture, or at best, the third one, cloud and flying birds picture. I must try. After speaking, Zen strode forward and stepped on the third rune. Although he had passed the first and second tests, the third test was also important. Anyway, he was determined to get the best contemplation picture. When Zen started to enter the third rune, he saw bubbles appearing from a marsh in front. In the next instant, murlocs, half-human, half-fish creatures, climbed out one after another. There are 5 tasks in the third test. The first one is to challenge elite murlocs. With your strength, this should not be a difficult task for you. Saul's voice appeared beside Zen's ear. Zen waited till the ugly murlocs had stepped forward before summoning his broken flying knife. Then, without hesitation, he rushed toward them. Kill. As Saul had said, these murlocs weren't very powerful. Each of the murlocs was probably a little more powerful than a blade locust officer. But now, Zen's power had increased several times since his last visit to the south. The broken flying knife was like a shuttle running back and forth, drawing a thin silver line. Poof! Every time one tiny line passed over, the broken flying knife would cut a dozen of murlocs. Although the number of murlocs was overwhelming, the speed with which Zen sliced through them allowed him to kill about 3,000 or 4,000 murlocs in half an hour. At last, there were no more bubbles in the marsh. He had killed the first group of elite murlocs. Zen stood on the bodies of the murlocs with narrowed eyes, waiting for more opponents. When none came, he sat down to rest. In no time, more bubbles appeared in the marsh. The second group comprises ferocious beasts that live in the marsh. Their number is smaller than that of the murlocs, but they are more powerful, Saul explained. The ferocious beasts had huge bodies, like giant gorillas. With black faces and sharp teeth, their appearance was terrifying. Zen lifted the broken flying knife and readied himself. These ferocious beasts had astonishing strength, but they were not as flexible as the murlocs. What was more, Zen had the phoenix crystal on his right arm, because of which his speed was significantly increased. When facing these tall, big ferocious beasts, Zen was like a butterfly. He flew back and forth among them without stopping. However, as Zen soon found out, compared to the elite murlocs, these ferocious beasts had tenacious vitality. Even though Zen used the broken flying knife to injure them or cut open their bellies, the other parts of these beasts could still move freely. The only way to kill them was to cut off their heads. It was difficult for others to penetrate the thick fur and skull of the ferocious beast with their weapon, but it was easy for Zen. Till now, nothing except Yolanda's enchantment could stop Zen's broken flying knife. After an hour, Zen killed the last remaining ferocious beast from the marsh. He sat on a rock and tried to settle his chaotic breathing. Zen had been counting the number of beasts he had killed. There had been 466 beasts in total. The broken flying knife in your hand is nice. The second task was also easy, but you have to be careful during the third task. If you can't make it, you can choose to quit. The second contemplation picture, the 9-day cycle picture, is very good. The second host of the fairy palace mainly cultivated this picture, Saul reminded Zen. The second host. Zen was sure that Saul had not mentioned that the fairy palace had more than one host till now. If Zen was aiming for a reward, he was surely going to get the best one. In his life, Zen had never thought of the two words, give up. After a short break, Zen felt the ground tremble. He knew that the third task was about to begin. Crack! As the ground trembled violently, a ferocious breath came from the marsh. Having never heard such a sound before, Zen presumed it was from some nameless ancient monster. In no time, a snake rose from the marsh. Snakes. Zen saw dozens of snake heads emerge from the marsh. The heads looked up and swirled around the swamp. Only after the snakes had left the marsh, Zen found that the snakeheads were the heads of dire beasts. Under the snakehead was a huge body. This is a kind of ancient beast, the 9-headed snake. The adult snake is powerful and strong, and you can never be its opponent. These are just infant 9-headed snakes. It should be noted that they have rank poison, and each head has a different poison. If you can't defeat them, I will let you leave the phantom. Saul said worriedly. The environment set by the celestial being was dangerous. If Zen died in the phantom, his soul would be destroyed, which was something that Saul was unwilling to see. Hearing the words rank poison, Zen showed a faint smile. If another way of attacking was used, Zen would probably be frightened. But Zen had the body of a spiritual weapon, and he was not afraid of any poison. Can the snake poison harm me? There were a dozen of infant 9-headed snakes, and each of them was 100 feet tall. The snakeheads were strange with different colors, such as yellow, brown, and red. Some snakeheads were colorful and bright. The snake with the brighter color had a stronger poison. Crack! The 9-headed snake in the front attacked Zen first. Its 9 heads sprayed saliva at Zen at the same time. He avoided the saliva. When the saliva touched the flowers and grass on the ground, a squeaking sound reverberated through the phantom. All the plants died, and even the ground turned black. Zen was surprised by the potency of the poison of the 9-headed snakes. If an ordinary person touched a little, they would probably die immediately. Even nature creatures would avoid it when battling a 9-headed snake. They would lose their life if they were not careful. But Zen was reckless. After he skirted around the poisonous saliva, he hovered on the ground before heading behind the 9-headed snake. He released the broken flying knife in his hand. It shot toward the body of the snake, like lightning. Whoosh! The 9 heads of the snake were flexible. As soon as Zen positioned himself behind the creature, the snakeheads turned and sprayed poisonous saliva at Zen. Zen couldn't avoid the poisonous saliva despite changing direction several times around the 9-headed snake. He summoned all his strength under his feet and bent his body in an arc. He didn't dodge the poisonous saliva. Instead, he rushed up under it. You want to die? Saul asked in surprise. He apparently didn't understand why Zen acted in this way. Buzz! The poisonous saliva was sprayed on Zen's body and corroded his skin. However, Zen stayed calm and rushed to the snakeheads in one breath. Chapter 148. The Ghosts of the Masters. Go to perdition. The broken flying blade cut through the air with high speed that it looked like a silver line to the naked eye. Bash! The heads of the snake were not as strong as Zen thought because they got cut off easily. Without the heads, the snake would die. After its body wriggled in the air, its severed body finally fell to the ground motionless. Standing on the dead body of the snake, Zen sighed of relief. At this point, he heard Saul's voice from the sky, "You really are surprising, kid. Who would have thought you're immune to snake venom? It looks like you can make it through this round." The most difficult part of the third round was to face the venom of the 9-headed snake that could rotate its heads at any direction. But he was not afraid of snake venom at all, so the Hydra's deadly venom was useless. Zen killed it without breaking a sweat. After hearing Saul's word, Zen smiled, but he didn't relax. He immediately jumped and rushed towards another Hydra. Go to perdition. Zen was not threatened by the Hydra's venom, so as soon as he approached it, he could quickly cut off its heads. In total, Zen had killed 6 Hydras in no time. But the rest of the Hydras realized that their venom had no effect on Zen, so they changed their attack strategy. When Zen attacked the Hydra, it bit him and tried to swallow him whole. Zen wasn't ready for such an attack, so he didn't have time to dodge it. He was swallowed whole by the Hydra. However, only after a few seconds, the Hydra's head burst open and sputtered blood all over its body. The Hydras were no match to Zen's brute strength, so he used this as an advantage to break the Hydra's head from the inside. Go to perdition, you beast. He went on a killing spree and finally killed all the Hydras. In this round, Zen had all the advantages that helped him finish the round faster and advance to the next round. For one, he was immune to all the toxins in the world. And two, the number of opponents in this round was smaller than the previous rounds, so he finished in a short time. Congratulations on passing this round. You can now get the cloud and flying birds picture as your prize for getting through this far. This picture dates far back. If you look at the picture, I'm sure you will benefit from it. You can make your choice now, Saul told Zen. Zen shook his head firmly. Do you really want to go through the 4th round? Trust me, each task gets tougher as you move up and only the most gifted races can pass all the rounds. Well, you've done well, but you're still an ordinary human being, so there's no way you can pass the next rounds. Take my advice and leave with the picture, Saul advised Zen. It wasn't an insult, but rather a kind counsel. Zen was the best compared to his own race. But being in the fairy palace for too long, Saul had seen many talents better than Zen. If I don't try, I will not know for sure. If I fail, at least I have tried, Zen replied decisively. No matter how difficult the next rounds would be, Zen would keep on trying because he wanted the 5th contemplation picture. I like your persistence and determination. I don't think you can do it, but if you want to try, then go ahead. Saul realized that there was nothing he could do to change Zen's mind, so he let him through the 4th round. Zen stood in the front of a swamp, patiently and quietly waiting for the beasts. Suddenly, tiny light balls appeared from the swamp making a squeaky sound. Zen got a little scared. These aren't beasts. What are they? Zen asked. These are the ghosts of the masters who were eaten by the swamp. When they died, they still had unfinished businesses, so they became these little lights floating on the swamp. If you insist on going through this round, they may eat your soul. Saul warned. After Saul's warning, the little light balls suddenly transformed into what seemed like glowing bodies. The only thing missing was their feet, but it didn't matter because they could float. The 7 ghosts rushed towards Zen. Having no weight, the ghosts moved fast. 1 second, they were floating on the swamp, and in the blink of an eye, they were already in front of Zen. How could they move so fast? Zen was taken aback by such an eerie speed. In his panic, he fired the broken flying blade towards the ghosts without thinking. Expectedly, the blade just passed through the ghost and didn't do any harm. Ah! A ghost uttered a bitter cry with endless resentment before thrusting towards Zen. The ghost moved so fast that Zen didn't have enough time to dodge the attack. He put his arms up to protect himself, but the ghost just went straight through his body. Though the ghost didn't touch him, Zen felt a sharp pain as if he was bitten by an animal. The pain his soul felt was overwhelming. Because of the pain, Zen couldn't react fast enough. Another ghost rushed towards him and caused Zen pain as it passed through his body. Ah! The 7 ghosts continued to make resentful cries and attack Zen's soul alternately. At this moment, Zen could not do anything but to endure each attack. The pain is too much. I must fight back, or they will eat my soul and kill me. Zen felt another sharp pain in his body. He thought, These ghosts are like wild animals. What should I do about them? Pure physical attacks won't damage them. If that's the case, then I have to use this one. When a ghost started to attack, Zen suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, "Spiritual thorn." A gray thorn suddenly popped out of Zen's forehead and fired towards the attacking ghost. Spiritual thorn could turn a person's soul into a sharp thorn that could be used to attack another person's soul. This was the simplest or the lamest way of attacking a soul. In the eastern region, there were not many studies on souls and how to defeat one. That was why the spiritual thorn was the basic method on how to attack an enemy's soul. Now Zen thought that it was the only way to defeat the impeccable ghost. Shashing. The spiritual thorn attack was so sudden that the ghost attacking Zen didn't have time to avoid it and got hit by the thorn. When it was stabbed, the ghost shriveled like a balloon until it finally disappeared. It worked, Zen exclaimed excitedly. At first, he was getting discouraged by the seemingly impeccable ghost and just let them attack him. But he was relieved that the spiritual thorn worked at the ghost. He felt ecstatic and saw a glimpse of hope. But it seemed that he celebrated too early. After the first ghost was killed by the spiritual thorn, the remaining 6 ghosts became smarter and more careful. The ghosts moved faster than before and bit Zen quickly. Despite the speed of Zen's spiritual thorn, the ghosts knew exactly when it would attack, and they could completely dodge it. Zen was failing this time. He couldn't touch any of the ghosts by his spiritual thorn. He was at the disadvantage in this battle. The pain made his soul weak and he started to feel dizzy. This is insane. I can't be beaten. I will kill you all. After several failed attempts, Zen closed his eyes and used the spiritual thorn to attack at random. He didn't use any logic of his naked eye and just followed his other senses when attacking. And it worked. He had pierced a ghost. Only 5 left. Zen gritted his teeth. He stood up despite the dizziness and continued to fight. However, the goddess of luck was not always on Zen's side. When he tried to use the same trick on the remaining ghosts, it didn't work again. The ghosts continued to attack him, and the pain became more overwhelming. His soul became more fragile and weaker. Well, look at you. You're not only immune to any toxins but you can also use your mind to attack your enemy. If you're lucky, maybe you can hit another one. But from how I see it, your soul attack is simple and lame. You might end up dead before you can quit, said Saul. Zen was weak and could barely stand, but he was not giving up. He gritted his teeth and shook his head. Just give me a little more time. I will definitely defeat them. How can you kill them? Your soul attack level is low. Turning your soul into a thorn to attack is a primitive method, but these ghosts have way more advanced thinking. You're just lucky to have killed 2 ghosts. Better give up now while you're still alive, Saul suggested. These ghosts will attack you again. What can you do now? The 5 ghosts surrounded Zen from all angles. It appeared to them that Zen was ready to give up, so they wanted to eat his soul completely. Despite being surrounded, Zen just stood. He suddenly gritted his teeth and shouted, "Ah!" As he yelled, a cyan dragon figure roared in Zen's deep mind. The dragon's roar turned into an invisible cyan shock wave that spread out in all directions. When the cyan hit the ghosts, they vanished instantly. And in that instant, all the 5 evil ghosts vanished. The cyan shock wave dispersed them all in one attack. Chapter 149, The Immortal Soul. While Saul watched Zen beat all the evil ghosts, he remained silent for a while. Then slowly, he said, "Interesting. There appears to be a dragon lying dormant in your body." A dragon? Zen did not try to deny it. In fact, there was not only 1 dragon inside his body, but 9. However, only the cyan dragon that lay at the bottom of his body woke up. Particularly, it was the dragon that killed the evil spirits. It was a shame that he could not tell when the other 8 dragons were going to awaken. Perhaps, the next dragon might only wake up after the current cyan dragon's scales were completely lit up. Haha, not bad at all. Indeed, you are qualified to proceed to the 5th round. Seeing that you have already passed 4 tests by now, I won't force you to give up anymore. Should you be successful in the final test, you will obtain the Sun Moon Stars picture, which is the most powerful contemplation picture in the Fairy Palace. Your only chance at winning, however, depends on you going at it with all your strength. Since the attacks of the ghosts affected your soul, I can assist you with your recovery. As a creature of wide knowledge and experiences, Saul had seen all kinds of people while staying at the Fairy Palace. During his encounter with Zen, he had looked down on the man repeatedly. Nevertheless, Zen succeeded in conquering all the difficulties and consistently passed the tests one at a time. After a while, Saul could no longer intimidate the man and allowed him to advance to the next test instead. As soon as Saul stated his intention to help, a halo of light descended from the sky and directly entered Zen's brain. Suddenly, his soul appeared to be in a relaxed state, giving him a sense of pleasure and making him almost want to cry out in bliss. Despite Saul being just a puppet, he had casually displayed his surprising skills to cure people. After the halo disappeared, Zen, who had been beyond exhausted, suddenly felt energized as his eyes beamed with high spirits. After stretching his limbs in satisfaction, he turned to Saul eagerly. "Okay, I don't think I need to take a break anymore. Allow me to start the final challenge now," Zen said, looking at the endless marsh before him. While bracing himself for another fight, he could not help but wonder, what kind of opponent am I going to be up against in the last test? It was not long before an armored warrior appeared from the marsh. Squinting for a better look, Zen took in the appearance of his enemy. The armored warrior looked as tall as he did, but the aura emanating from him was confusing. This armored man is only half step into the nature level. It's incredible. Zen was dumbfounded. It never occurred to him that he would meet an opponent who was at the half step into the nature level. With Zen's current strength, even if he had to confront nature creatures, they could hardly stay alive in the battle, let alone opponents with only half step into the nature level. So far, only the illuminating soul realm masters could beat him. It was going to be a piece of cake for him to deal with anyone of the half step into the nature level. Because of this, Zen was perplexed about the arrangement. Do not look down on your opponent. The fifth and also the final test is the most difficult that you will have to face. The real strength of that armored man is about the same as yours, half step into the nature level. If you are a nature creature, then so is the armored man, Saul explained. Zen smiled lightly and said, "Then, I will definitely win." "Huh," Saul exclaimed, looking at him in mild surprise. "How could that be so easy?" Within the warrior's body, there is a strand of soul remnant from an unknown immortal. Although the soul remnant has no memory, it comes from the soul of an immortal. Thus, it has inherited the battle skills and styles of the immortal. Even though he is of the same level as you are not a match for him in terms of the cultivation method and actual combat experience. A strand of soul remnant from an immortal? Zen repeated slowly. Upon hearing Saul's words, his heart grew heavy and his facial expression turned glum. The same strength, used by different people, would show different effects. A great example was Zen himself. Even though he had only entered half step into the nature level, it was rather easy for him to defeat nature creatures. On the other hand, his opponent now was an immortal. Except that, this immortal before him reduced his level to half step into the nature level just to fight with him. I must be careful, Zen thought to himself. He became more vigilant than ever. Holding the broken flying knife, he gazed unwaveringly at the armored warrior not far away. The armored warrior approached Zen at a slow pace, appearing as though he were only taking a leisure walk. And as he continued to tread steadily, waves of life energy emitted from his helmet and armor. It is life energy. As the armored warrior was presently half step into the nature level, he could not use life vitality. Therefore, Zen assumed that the matter he saw coming from the armored warrior was merely life energy. However, the life energy seemed so strange. Instead of being a single color, there were several of them. Even more, the life energy constantly changed shades. What kind of cultivation method has he mastered that enables him to summon such vibrant life energy? No matter what, I'd better strike him first to gain the upper hand, Zen thought. Like a flying shuttle, Zen pushed off the ground and rushed towards the armored warrior. At the same time, he shot the broken flying knife straight at the armored warrior. With a loud rustle, the broken flying knife rotated and came sharply at the head of the armored warrior. Trying to outmaneuver the armored warrior, Zen thought of a strategy to subdue him. For his plan to work, the armored warrior had to dodge the flying knife, and then that was when he planned to use the spiritual thorn. After that, he would retrieve the flying knife and initiate his fatal attack. However, the armored warrior ruined his plan with a single move, one that was simple yet effective enough for him to avoid biting the dust so early in the battle. In a very subtle manner, the armored warrior tilted his head. His execution to dodge the flying knife was swift, accurate, and concise. By simply tilting in one direction, the flying knife brushed past his cheek. It missed the target by only half an inch. He is so confident about himself. He knows the flying path of the knife as though it were the back of his hand. Zen thought and looked at the armored warrior, gasping in surprise. Then he turned his thumb down and dragged the flying knife back, following the same route. With a lift, he then shot the flying knife at the backside of the armored warrior's head again. His opponent slightly turned his head to one side, just as he did earlier. It was as though he had eyes on the back of his head. He successfully dodged the attack from the flying knife. All Zen could do was wear a dumbstruck look. His 2 consecutive attacks had both failed. To his astonishment, the armored warrior just got away with it so effortlessly. After attempting the best tactic that he could think of, he was now at his wit's end. Just then, the armored warrior suddenly took his first offensive move. He rushed towards Zen at a rapid speed. Is this the strength of a half-step into the nature-level cultivator? As Zen looked at the armored warrior who was speeding towards him, Zen's pupils dilated. He could not believe that a half-step into the nature-level cultivator could run so fast. It appeared that he had overlooked the similarity in the nature creatures and illuminating Soul Realm Master's reaction when they encountered him before. Truthfully, although his opponent had the half-step into the nature level, he also had the strand of soul remnant from an immortal. Therefore, his real strength could not be measured simply as an ordinary half-step into the nature level. While rushing towards Zen, the armored warrior extended his long skinny arms and manipulated the life energy to form 2 colorful curves in the air. As soon as the curves appeared, they were quickly compressed and turned into 2 fist shadows, which he harshly struck at Zen. At the same time, he suddenly advanced towards him. With lightning speed, the armored warrior dashed so rapidly that Zen was only able to see shadows of his body, which was barely visible to the naked eyes. In the blink of an eye, the armored warrior halted in front of Zen. Pulling back his hand to gain momentum, he then threw his fist at Zen. As luck would have it, while the warrior sped up, Zen had simultaneously injected the energy of the Phoenix Crystal into his body. With the help of the Phoenix Crystal, his speed increased by at least 10 times. Even then, he still fell a few steps behind compared to the armored warrior's speed. With an ominous rumble, his opponent's fist hit his body and smashed him down onto the ground. Despite sustaining minor damages, Zen was quick to counter the attack. As soon as he fell down with a howl, he immediately hit the ground with his fists and sprang to his feet. However, as soon as he stood up, he was struck with 2 fist shadows that were formed by the life energy. The fist shadows were too powerful that they hit his chest with a loud resounding thud. As a result, the armored warrior knocked him meters away. Zen rolled on the ground before he came to a halt. The armored warrior did not follow up his temporary victory with hot pursuit. Instead, he continued to walk towards Zen at a steady pace. Lying on the ground, Zen gasped as his chest heaved. This armored warrior is too powerful. He has prepared for his every move, and he sees right through my strategy. What should I do? He thought to himself while frowning. Still taking deep breaths, he rose to his feet. As he had reached this far, it was simply out of the question for him to give up so easily. When he straightened up, however, the armored warrior noticed him and zoomed towards him again. His figure flickered, approaching Zen with unfathomable steps. Go to perdition. With his eyes firmly fixated on his opponent, he swung his fist at the man as soon as he was within reach. Unfortunately, despite his efforts, the punch missed the target again. What he hit was only the shadow of the armored warrior. Suddenly, the armored warrior snuck behind him and placed his palms on his back. Zen felt a horrible strength push him on his back, and then he tumbled on the ground where he hit his head on the soft soil. The impact of the attack made him plow through the path, leaving a trace of a long furrow on the ground. Unable to help it, he spat out dirt from his mouth. Due to his terrible and uncontrolled landing, there was mud on his face, mouth, and even nose. Regardless of all the continued attacks, he still stood on his feet and cleaned the mud off his face. His only advantage was his exceptional body. Although he had endured several attacks from the armored warrior, he still managed to stand and try again. Had it been someone else, the last blow would have wounded the person and ended the challenge. Nevertheless, Zen's body had become strong after being tempered by the fire for several times. As powerful as the armored warrior was, his blow kept turning into a warm current, which served to wash Zen's belly. Pooh! After spitting out the aftertaste of mud in his mouth, he gazed at the armored warrior firmly. The armored warrior moved extremely fast. If he continued to approach Zen at such a speed, it was nearly impossible for Zen to catch sight of his body. In this case, Zen would definitely lose. I'll try to narrow the gap between us and fight hand to hand with him, Zen thought. As he had a strong and tough body, it never crossed Zen's mind to hesitate in a close distance and hand-to-hand battle. Without another thought, he threw his broken flying knife again. This time, though, the target of the flying knife was not the armored warrior, but to block his way of retreat. At the same time, he shortened the distance between the armored warrior and him, reaching out his hand to pull. But as soon as Zen had reached out, the armored warrior deflected his attack and simply shoved his hand away. "Do you want to push me away?" "No, I don't think so," Zen yelled. When his opponent had deflected his left hand, he quickly used his right hand to attack the armored warrior. But then again, Zen did not expect that the armored warrior's arms would be as flexible as the body of a spiritual snake. Quickly enough, the armored warrior twined his flexible arm around Zen's right hand and locked it firmly. Chapter 150, Entering the Nature Level. Zen's wish had come true. If he could get closer, he would have a better chance. Zen smiled. The dragon power erupted from his body. He lifted the armored man and intended to throw him on the ground. If the armored man was only a half step into the nature level, he certainly couldn't survive this. However, before Zen had the opportunity to do so, the armored man wriggled free from Zen's arms. His body was as soft as a snake. Zen had already decided to smash the armored man with his arms and fists. However, since the armored man clung to him closely, both of them lost their balance and fell to the ground. Meanwhile, Zen stretched out his right hand and attempted to grab the armored man's neck. He failed because the armored man's throat was slippery. The armored man got away. He rolled over and pinned Zen under his body. Contortion. An idea suddenly popped into his head. The armored man's moves reminded Zen of a bodybuilding martial art form that the eastern region called contortion. Ordinary people would practice several martial arts styles before entering the skin refining level, and contortion was one of them. However, after they entered the skin refining level, these people would commit themselves to becoming a real master and they would give up practicing contortion. This was because the martial arts style was used for bodybuilding and it was useless for the careers of real masters. Zen had learned contortion in his childhood. However, after he reached the skin refining level, he started to learn purple light fist, a method cultivated by his ancestors. Zen had never thought that an ordinary armored man could use contortion this way. In his mind, contortion was only used for bodybuilding. Zen found his martial arts useless when battling this armored man. A strand of the immortal's soul can possess such unbelievable strength, thought Zen. Zen felt very depressed after being pinned by the armored man. But Zen wouldn't give up easily as he was determined to get the fifth contemplation picture. The armored man put his foot behind Zen and didn't move. Actually, he was motionless and extremely quiet. He looked a bit arrogant. A strand of the immortal's soul still existed in his body, and it was intelligent. "Idiot," Zen cursed. Zen erupted into fury and struggled to get free. However, no matter how hard he tried to get up, the armored man pinned him down with his knee against Zen's body. This time, Zen held his breath and waited for his opportunity. Before he toppled to the ground, he stepped forward suddenly and then turned a somersault. Then, Zen finally rose to his feet. The armored man saw this and attempted to stop him. He followed Zen and stubbornly tried to pin him down again. "Kill yourself," said Zen, smirking unpleasantly. Zen's breast suddenly burst, and red blood splattered everywhere. From his bloody chest, the broken flying knife appeared and flew toward the head of the armored man. It cut through his head. He was standing too close to Zen. Although he was agile and strong, the armored man couldn't see or avoid the broken flying knife. The armored man swayed and fell. A few seconds later, a beam of green light shot through the dead man's head. The light flew around Zen and then disappeared in the blue sky. Zen sighed when he saw the wound on his breast. Before he began to wrestle with the armored man, Zen had worked out a way to defeat him. As the phantom of an immortal, the armored man had cultivated much better martial arts than Zen. Besides, he was extremely powerful and clever and could foresee all of Zen's moves in the fight. Thus, Zen had found it challenging to stop him. However, the armored man seemed to be dull, mostly because he lacked the immortal's memories. Therefore, Zen bet that he could not remember anything else apart from the battle and the fight. Finally, Zen used the broken flying knife to penetrate his chest and kill the armored man. The dull phantom would never think of such a vicious trick because no sane human being would hurt himself before killing the enemy. "Haha," Saul's laughter echoed. "Such a treacherous man. I bet you would not have won had you challenged this armored man fairly," said Saul. "I agree with you. Even I can't fight with an immortal, not even with a part of his ghost. Please, tell me, have I passed this test? Asked Zen. The pain was overwhelming. Although the pain would disappear as soon as the battle was over and he left there, his breast wound was bloody and painful. Yes, you won. The sun, moon, stars picture is yours now. You have the honor of being the second man to possess this picture. The first man was the first host of the fairy palace. This is an achievement of which you should feel proud. After Saul said these words, a big opening appeared in the sky, and a ray of light shot down on Zen's body. After the stars changed their position, Zen once again returned to the hall. Saul stretched out his right hand and pointed to the contemplation picture far away. Then, the sun, moon, stars picture automatically flew toward Zen and stopped over his hands. Is this the sun, moon, stars picture? Asked Zen curiously. He stared at the picture hard and tried to figure out its mechanism. However, it was strange that he couldn't look away from the sun, moon, stars picture. A magic power seemed to attract him so much that he couldn't remove his glance from the picture. What's happening? Asked Zen. Zen stared at the sun, moon, stars picture and asked Saul, why can't my eyes move? He couldn't remove his eyes from the picture, which made him feel extremely strange. Zen couldn't even raise his head, not even if at that moment, an opponent rushed at him with a sharp knife in his hand. A powerful magic was attracting both his eyes and his mind. Haha, the picture does that to anybody who sees it for the first time. Be patient, and you will be able to look away after a while. The sun, moon, stars picture will grant you the power of the moon, sun, and stars. Besides, it will help further your martial arts practice. Since the picture is yours, you can look at it carefully for a few moments. Then, you'll control it, and it wouldn't be strange anymore, said Saul. Zen found this occurrence to be both funny and annoying. He didn't expect this to happen at all. Somebody had drawn a sun, a moon, and some stars on a piece of parchment. Although it looked ordinary, the sun, moon, and stars were moving. The moon moved around the sun slowly, while the stars moved around the moon. Zen attempted to look away from the picture and roll it up but failed every time. He had lost control of his body. He had to listen to Saul's advice. Zen sat down and concentrated on the picture. Sitting on the ground and looking at the picture carefully, he was lost in thought. Demonic life energy began circling inside his belly. The longer Zen stared at the picture, the quicker the demonic life energy moved. The energy flew to Zen's head, dispersed through his eyes, and finally shot into the sun, moon, and stars picture. After the life energy entered the picture, it mixed with the stars and made them shine more. Then, the life energy once again wormed its way into Zen's belly. In this way, the life energy went in and out of Zen's body and the picture again and again. 1 time, 2 times, 100 times. Saul saw this and appeared shocked as well. It's unbelievable that you looked at the picture for the first time and you were capable of taking power from the stars and using it for yourself. Unbelievable. Although Saul had never seen anybody use the power from the sun, moon, stars picture, he once witnessed the second host of the fairy palace learned from the 9-day cycle picture. This second host was a genius as well. Before he came to the fairy palace, he was much stronger and more powerful than Zen. This formidable master could enter the first level of the 9-day cycle picture only after contemplating the 9-day cycle picture for half a year. However, there were 9 levels in the 9-day cycle picture. In contrast, the sun, moon, stars picture only had 3 levels, which meant the sun, moon, and stars. In respect of this, practicing the power and skills according to the sun, moon, stars picture seemed to be more difficult. Zen just started to contemplate a few minutes ago, and now, he was capable of taking the power and strength of the stars. He was a genius. Time passed. 3 days later, Zen was still sitting on the ground. After 3,000 circles, Zen suddenly closed his eyes. He contemplated for a while and then reopened his eyes. The stars were still shining brilliantly. The sun, moon, stars picture is marvelous. After absorbing the power from the stars, my spirit was lifted, and my soul was purified, thought Zen. He sighed deeply at the thought. This was Zen's intuitive feeling. However, as one of the Immortal's best pictures, the contemplation picture could do more than that. Zen exerted his energy and allowed it to flow inside his belly, forcing the demonic life energy to come out of his body. He found that some starlight was shining in the dark and purple demonic life energy. It was beautiful. The demonic life energy can swallow all other life energies and life vitality, but it gets along with this starlight well. Wait. All of a sudden, something abnormal happened. The demonic life energy disappeared from his hands. What's happening? Meanwhile, Zen felt the demonic life energy that was slowly flowing inside his belly began to give out heat. It was as though somebody had set a fire inside his body. The demonic life energy was flowing more and more quickly in his belly, and the heat was accumulating. The demonic life energy radiated from his belly and quickly rushed to all of his meridians. The nature of the demonic life energy had changed. It had become much thicker and smoother. Am I entering a new level? Chapter 151, Outside the Valley. Zen was pleasantly surprised. With the demonic life energy flowing through his body, Zen stretched his hand and forced some demonic life energy out of his body. The demonic life energy had changed indeed. Although it was still dark purple, it looked like thick dark purple fog. I have made a breakthrough. After being at a half step into the nature level for a long time, Zen had finally entered the nature level. The demonic life energy that was flowing in Zen's body was changing into life vitality. The thick dark fog in his hand was demonic life vitality. After Zen entered the nature level, his strength was promoted to a higher degree. It was more important that he had broken the barrier to the nature level, as in the future, Zen would enhance speed for cultivation. Congratulations! You are now a nature creature, Saul smiled faintly and praised Zen. In fact, with Saul's vision, let alone a nature creature, even a master at the illuminating soul realm was insignificant. But Saul was only a servant at the fairy palace, and now, Zen was the temporary host. As long as Zen continued to perform well, he was destined to become the real host of the palace. Saul naturally had to respect him. Zen nodded and smiled at Saul. After becoming a nature creature, Zen was one level closer to his goal. Then he closed his eyes and started to consolidate his realm. 3 days later, Zen opened his eyes. As a nature creature, Zen felt that his body had changed. His breath was longer and more forceful. It would take 30 minutes to take a breath. After Zen solidified his realm, he jumped up and threw a punch in the air. This was the first move of the heavenly ogre fist called Ogres Shaking the World. When he threw the punch, a black fist shadow emerged rapidly. It was more solid and faster. Since Zen had absorbed power from the Sun Moon Stars picture, the shadow glittered with the power of the stars. Looking at the fist shadow, Zen curled his lips. Unfortunately, he had no opponent on whom to test the power of the heavenly ogre fist. Zen considered Saul for a while. Although Saul remained expressionless, Zen shook his head and dismissed the idea. He knew that Saul's strength was endless. If he decided to test his new powers on Saul, there might not be a reaction. There was much for Zen to celebrate. After all, he had become the temporary host of the fairy palace and had received the best contemplation picture. However, Zen was crestfallen when he learned that he couldn't use anything in the big palace. If he could enter the pill refining room and acquire an elixir, could his strength be significantly improved? The cause and effect of everything was a blessing. Since the third host of the fairy palace had made such an arrangement, it must be for a reason. Zen wouldn't insist on it, however. Saul had informed Zen that he couldn't enter any other place in the fairy palace except the room in which he found himself. Considering the limitations, Zen thought it would be a waste of his time to remain in the palace. Zen saluted Saul and said, "I have been in the fairy palace for a long time. If there is nothing else to do, I will leave." Oh, Saul was astonished. This fairy palace is the perfect place to cultivate, especially since the speed to congeal life vitality is several times higher than in the outer world. If you want to cultivate, the palace is the best place. Why do you want to leave? Saul had waited so many years to welcome the new host of the fairy palace. Now that Zen had become the temporary host, Saul hadn't thought that Zen would leave so soon. However, Zen shook his head, "I have many things to do outside." Saul thought for a while and then stretched his hand. A magical token appeared in his palm. Zen couldn't understand all the complex patterns on the face of the token. However, he did recognize the word, "wind," that had also been engraved on the surface. If you want to return to the fairy palace in the future, you need to show this token at the entrance, Saul told him. When Zen lifted the token, it felt heavy. It was not made of gold or iron. Puzzled, Zen studied the token. He was unsure of what metal had been used to make the token. Before Zen left, a lonely expression filled Saul's eyes. Although Saul had the body of a puppet, he had a living soul. After waiting for so many years, his soul had suffered tremendously. Zen was touched when he saw Saul's expression. Saul had helped him many times during the tests, and so he said to Saul, "Don't worry. You have waited thousands of years. Believe me, I will return soon." Although I am only the temporary host now, I will surely become the real host of the fairy palace. A faint smile crept on Saul's face. He said, come on. Maybe you can revitalize this fairy palace. What Saul didn't tell Zen was that after the third host of the fairy palace died, 7 or 8 temporary hosts had come to the palace one after another in the past. However, none could inherit the fairy palace. Saul walked with Zen until they reached the gate of the fairy palace. As Zen took another step forward, Saul whispered to himself, however. Ever since the first host, only this youth was able to get the sun moon stars picture. Even the second and third hosts of the fairy palace didn't qualify for it. Maybe he can complete the host's last wish. ... After leaving the fairy palace, Zen walked inside the enchanted barrier. To protect himself, Zen wore the mask again. When he returned to the Dragon Valley, he found the group of nature creatures from the top 7 noble clans. That group of nature creatures had been waiting beside the pond because they couldn't pass the jade path. Owing to the enchantment's isolation, they couldn't see what happened in the pavilion in the middle of the pond. After waiting for a long time, they had to leave the fairy palace. After all, the palace was dangerous to them. If the 2 giant puppets who were led to the square edge returned, probably none of them would survive. After exiting the fairy palace, they returned to Dragon Valley and waited patiently. Perhaps 7 or 8 days had passed as they waited. There was no news from the fairy palace, and they didn't see anyone leave. The nature creatures felt restless. It was possible that the masters at the illuminating soul realm from their clans had died. Anything was possible in the dangerous fairy palace. Just at the moment, a light flashed between the 2 bamboos, and Zen appeared. It's him. It's the bloke in the mask. He is alive. No way. Where is my uncle? How is he? Seeing the masked boy, the nature creatures were astonished. Without hesitating, they began inquiring after their clan members. Zen crossed the jade path and entered the pavilion safely. The nature creatures were clear about the strength difference between Zen and the masters at the illuminating soul realm. Since the pavilion was dangerous for the higher level people, they assumed that the bloke in the mask would be the first to die. After all, he was the weakest among those who entered the pavilion. Although Zen had killed 2 nature creatures with some tricky tactics before, the nature creatures didn't think highly of him. There was a natural chasm between nature creatures and the people at the illuminating soul realm, which was impossible to cross. Since only the bloke in the mask had returned, the people waiting outside couldn't accept that. Some nature creatures asked Zen about the elders of their clans. Zen sneered and lowered his head. He didn't intend on answering their questions. He was not in the same boat as these people and didn't feel as though he owed them an explanation. At the same time, Zen didn't want to make trouble. As long as these nature creatures didn't get aggressive, he would let them go. While Zen wanted to leave, the other people didn't allow him to. Stop. Do you want to leave? Several nature creatures blocked Zen's path. I don't know you. If I stay as you have requested, will you treat me to tea? Zen smiled faintly and mocked them. The nature creature in the front replied coldly, we can have tea. My clan has the best heavenly spirit tea in the eastern region. If you can explain what happened inside, I will treat you to tea every day. Zen shook his head, I am not interested. Goodbye. What happened to the elders from my family? Where are they now? The man was unwilling to step aside and question Zen again. Zen's expression soured. I will repeat what I said earlier. I don't know you. I am not in the mood to answer your questions. Get out of the way if you don't want to die. The strength Zen showed before had already left these people puzzled. After all, Zen could kill Eve and had taken Leon's life. Although some of these nature creatures were more powerful than Leon, the distance between each of them and Leon wouldn't be large. Everyone was afraid of Zen for now. The force with which Zen had spoken was so great that the nature creatures moved one step back. One of the men shouted, everyone, come together. He must know what happened in the fairy palace. Don't let him go. It was said that there was strength in numbers. Perhaps this was why the other men felt encouraged to the degree that they challenged Zen. Everyone had been fearful of Zen, but they didn't believe that Zen could defeat so many nature creatures by himself. Seeing so many nature creatures surrounding him, Zen narrowed his eyes and emitted a strong killing intent. He didn't want to kill more people, but these people from the noble clans were so hard to deal with. If you want to lose your life, come closer. I can fulfill your wish. All of you will die just like the people at the illuminating soul realm in the palace. Zen summoned his dark purple demonic life vitality and prepared for battle. What? All of them died? How about my uncle? No way. They are masters at the illuminating soul realm. How can they die so easily? You are a liar. What Zen said revealed that all the masters at the illuminating soul realm were dead. Everyone heard that, but none of them could believe it. Since the fairy palace was a dangerous place, all of these clan members knew that even masters at the illuminating soul realm were as powerless as insects and could die of an accident at any time. But they didn't believe it because they couldn't accept the truth. Chapter 152, The Lightning Horse of the Li family. These illuminating soul realm masters were all the backbone of the top 7 noble clans. If they had been killed in the fairy palace, it would bring shame and dishonor on the top 7 clans. I don't need to prove myself. Go and find out for yourself. It's none of my business. Listen, I'm getting out of here now, and if anyone tries to stop me, I will kill him. Zen angrily said. He was about to leave when someone shouted, "You can't go without explaining to our Huang family. I won't let you leave here alive if you don't." A nature creature from the Huang family blocked Zen's way. He turned his life vitality into a small green dragon that rushed towards Zen with an open mouth. "Get out of my way!" Zen shouted while firing the demonic life vitality from his hands. Pung! The demonic life vitality crushed the green small dragon before it could approach Zen. Although the green small dragon was transformed from life vitality, it wasn't swallowed by Zen's life vitality because its grade was not high enough. After hitting the green small dragon, Zen went straight for the nature creature of the Huang family with sparkling stars on his hand. Zen didn't use the heavenly ogre fist. He just wrapped his hand with power by activating the demonic life vitality. The moment that the demonic life vitality hit the nature creature, the sparkling stars suddenly exploded. Boom, 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 boom. Each of the sparkling stars was only about the size of a rice grain, but its massive explosive powers shocked even the nature creatures. The stars were destroyed one by one as they exploded. By the time the explosions were over, the nature creature of the Huang family had totally disappeared, crushing the opponent into ash with just one hit. What an incredible power! The illuminating soul realm masters were at awe by what they had seen. Even they couldn't have possibly made it. The faces of the nature creatures turned pale in horror and surprise. He was just half a step into the nature level when he entered the fairy palace, but he was able to defeat Leon and killed him. Look at him now. He can now transform the life energy in his body to life vitality. He is progressing fast. Now that he has become a nature creature and his competence has improved significantly, we are now no match for him. Someone said in a low voice. Zen looked around and asked coldly, "Does anyone else want to stop me?" There was silence in the place. Not one nature creature would want to battle Zen now. After a while, a young man stepped forward from the crowd and said to Zen, "You must explain in detail about what happened in the fairy place." "What if I don't want to explain?" Zen said with fury in his eyes. Seeing how furious Zen was, the young man took a few steps back and calmed himself down. He continued, "If you don't want to explain, you'll have to make up for the loss of our top 7 noble clans." Zen laughed hysterically as if he just heard the funniest joke of his life. "Make up for the loss? Why should I do that? Who do you think you are?" Zen had suffered a lot because of the noble clans, and since then, he had held a grudge against the noble clans. Hearing that, the young man's face looked even paler. He continued, "Aren't you becoming a little too arrogant for your rank?" The members of the top 7 noble clans feared Zen's power, but they had seen various masters since they were young. Most of the top 10 disciples of Cloud Sect came from the most gifted disciples of the top 7 noble clans. The nature creatures came from the noble clans were offended when Zen paid them no mind at all. They found it hard to keep calm at the arrogant young man. "I'm too arrogant." Zen chuckled and stepped forward and said, "Here's what I offer. Go back to your home and tell your elders that I will eliminate the noble clans one by one for the rest of my life. Then you'll see what real arrogance is." The other nature creatures were flustered with anger because of Zen's arrogance. However, there was nothing they could do because Zen was stronger than they were. He even had killed the nature creature of the Huang family. As no one else stopped him, Zen finally left. They said nothing until they were sure that Zen had left completely. Once Zen was out of the valley, they started to discuss the matter at hand. It wasn't about the safety of the illuminating soul realm masters anymore, but the arrogance and power of Zen instead. The grassroots men's violent nature will lead them to die young despite their skills and talent. The genius members from RU family are not inferior to him, and they are much more polite and modest than he is. Let's not worry about today. The young man in the mask would surely die soon. Let's wait and see. He must die. I don't need you to tell me. We are the pillars of the burning sky empire and all who oppose us must die. That young man is no exception. The nature creatures were boasting about their authority to one another. But none of them had dared to speak ill of Zen when he was around. After leaving from Dragon Valley, Zen felt ecstatic somehow. He was sure that the nature creatures would talk about him behind his back, but he didn't care. He knew that the noble clans must be repressed so that they could feel fear. When he arrived in G County, he thought of buying a horse to speed up his journey. He was looking for a fast horse, but the small place like G County only raised ordinary horses. Seeing that Zen was eager to buy a good kind of horse, a ostler ran after him when he was about to leave. The ostler said, "Sir, I know someone who has the horse you're looking for." "Is that so? Where can I find that person?" Zen was quite eager to buy a horse and didn't care who he would be buying the horse from. The ostler pointed at a house in a distance and said, "The Lee family who live over there. They are the richest family in G County, and they own the fastest horse in this county. The young master always rides this horse around." Zen smiled at the ostler and paid him some gold leaves which he took from his space ring. The ostler was happy and thanked Zen for his generosity. But he didn't forget to remind Zen, the young master of the Lee family is a short-tempered lad. If you want to buy the horse, you should have enough patience to talk him through it. Zen smiled slightly and thanked the ostler for his advice. But whether he would talk to the young master patiently or not was up to his mood. Following the instruction of the ostler, Zen walked through a street full of luxury buildings owned by the Lee family. It was obvious because all of these buildings had a diamond-shaped wooden sign carved with the word, Lee. Shortly, he arrived at the gate of the Lee mansion where he was greeted by two attendants in leather armor. They shouted at him, "Don't stand here. This is not a public place. If you don't leave soon, we will catch and imprison you for trespassing." But before Zen could talk back to the attendants, he heard a neigh of the horse. When he turned around, he saw a man riding on horseback coming towards the gate from the street. Zen had better eyesight than any normal person and he could see the horse clearly from afar. He noticed that as the horse's feet touched the ground, it produced a blue spark. It had incredible speed, not something that he had seen from any other horse. It was indeed the horse he was going to buy. At the blink of the eye, the horse had already covered a great distance of the long street. As the lightning horse dashed through the street to the gate of the Lee mansion, a cart carrying children suddenly came out of an alley. It was a skinny old man who was pulling the cart. He didn't expect that a horse was coming at such high speed. He was stunned and could not move because of panic. "What the heck?" the man riding the horse cursed. He was young and aggressive. From the silk robe he was wearing, he must be the young master of the Lee family. All the bystanders on the street could not bear to look at what could possibly happen once the horse hit the cart. They were expecting the worst, that the kids and the old man would die if the horse turned over the cart and ran over them. When the horse was about to collide with the cart, Zen came in between and caught the horse's forelegs to avoid the collision. "It's dangerous here. Go and move your cart now," Zen said lightly to the old man while he was lifting the horse's forelegs. The old man was surprised by Zen's action. His eyes were still filled with panic. But he immediately moved the cart out of the way as Zen instructed. Holding on to his horse to avoid from falling, the young man shouted, "Mongrel, what do you think you're doing? Let go of my horse now." Zen's face darkened with fury when he heard the young man cursing him. He carefully put down the horse's legs to avoid hurting it. "Are you out of your mind? How dare you stop my horse? You're courting death." As soon as the horse was back on its 4 feet, the young man tried to snap his lash at Zen. Zen caught the lash with his fingers and wrapped the end around his hand. At that moment, the attendants at the Lee mansion gate rushed over and shouted, "Let go of the whip, dumb rear. How dare you offend our young master? Kneel before our master now or you're dead." Zen sneered at the attendants and instead of letting the whip go, he pulled it causing the young man to topple down from the horse's back. The young master was used to VIP treatment everywhere he went and didn't imagine anyone who would treat him otherwise, so, when Zen played him as a fool, he was stunned. The attendants, however, were quick to make a move. They took out their weapons and pointed them at Zen. "You're in big trouble. If you had just knelt, we would have let you go after 100 beatings. But we're afraid that we would have to cut you in pieces for what you did." Chapter 153, The Foolish Young Master. "Oh, really? So tell me how you will cut me into pieces. Where will you start? Here, or there?" Zen taunted the attendants. He pulled the young master closer to him and placed his broken flying blade on the latter's throat. Are you insane? Let go of the young master now. The two servants were furious, but they were careful as they moved closer to their young master. Just then, the young master of the Lee family realized what was happening and cursed out loud. Mongrel, you release me now and kill yourself with your knife to atone for your mistake. Or else, I will have you and the rest of your family killed. The young master hardly finished his words as Zen slapped him hard across the face. Kill me and my family? Do you even know who I am? And what method will you use to kill me? Asked Zen in a deadly cold voice as he pushed the knife harder on young master's neck, enough to wound him slightly. How dare you slap me? Even my parents have never hurt me. You're dead. I shall, the young master threatened even with his bleeding mouth. He was extremely arrogant and relentlessly cruel. He could not finish his sentence again because of a short loud sound. Zen had slapped him again, and harder this time. The young master looked at him furiously and was about to say something again, but Zen slapped him one more time. Seeing how their young master was being treated, the two servants held their weapons and attacked Zen. However, Zen kicked them one by one and they fell back to the ground. After he took care of the two servants, Zen went back to handle the young master. He wasn't really looking for trouble and didn't intend to get involved in such fight. He just wanted the horse. Zen continued to slap the young master 5 or 6 more times. Finally, the arrogant and vicious local tyrant of G country knew his place. Will you continue to curse? Asked Zen. No, I won't, the young master said in a quivering voice. Zen smiled and said, that's good to hear. You're doing the right thing. Actually, I didn't come here to scold you. I just needed one thing from you. What is it? The young master asked in surprise. He then continued, I don't even know you. I want that horse, so I came here to make a deal with you, Zen said as he pointed at the lightning horse beside them. Ah, the young master was not willing to sell his favorite horse to anyone or for any amount. As a slacker in the family, he never spent time dealing with any family business matters or cared for anyone but himself. But when he found out about the lightning horse, he dedicated his time and effort in acquiring the horse, and since that day, he never wanted to depart from it. But when he remembered how hard and painful Zen's slaps were, the young master became scared. He was caught in a dilemma and it had shown in his face. What's the matter? Don't you want to sell it? Zen's voice suddenly turned cold. Yes, I do. I'll sell it to you. Sensing the change in Zen's tone, the young master quickly agreed. However, upon glimpsing the mansion gate, he came around and cursed, in your dream, fool. Forget you. The young master quickly turned around and ran. Just as that moment, a crowd walked out of the Lee family mansion led by a wealthy-looking man. The man walked with 2 escorts beside him and radiated a threatening aura. Instead of going after the young master instantly, Zen stood still and stared at the group of people coming out of the mansion. The young master ran towards the man and hid behind him. He said with tears, Father, that mongrel slapped me out of nowhere. The cheeks of the young master were swollen and there was blood on his mouth. He looked ragged, far from his usual elegant look. It looked like he was beaten up good by Zen. The young master's father was the wealthiest man in the G country and his name was Price Lee. The young master was his only son and he had him after so many years of trying. Therefore, he couldn't help but spoil his son and he would do everything to protect him from any harm. When he saw his son's severely injured face, his face turned pale. Price comforted his son then walked towards Zen with his 2 bodyguards. Who do you think you are? How dare you hit my son? But Zen was in no mood to explain himself and said to Price, yes, I beat him. So what? Price Lee was a man of real ability. He made successful businesses out of the barren land of G country. When he talked to Zen, he could sense that the young man's arrogance was from his strength. But he didn't feel fear. You're just a nature creature. How dare you beat up my son in front of my house? Do you really think that no one in G country can defeat you? He said. After saying this to Zen, Price gestured to his bodyguards and they stepped forward. Price's bodyguards were the top of masters in G country. One of them had reached the 7th grade of nature level, while the other one was at the 8th grade. Zen was a little surprised about the strength of their martial arts. Because in his hometown, the C country, a master at 5th grade of nature level could dominate the whole county with his supremely strong power. Why do these 2 masters in G country work for him as his bodyguards? Zen was confused. He stopped wondering about it when he couldn't get an answer. If he was still a half step into the nature level, it would be difficult for him to handle these two masters. But now that he reached the nature level, fighting with these two bodyguards would be an easy task. After receiving the order from their master, the bodyguards closed in on Zen but didn't attack just yet. They sensed that Zen was only at a nature level, so they thought they could give him an easy time and let him give up on his own. However, they were surprised that Zen took the first attack. Zen didn't use the life vitality in his body this time. He used the phoenix crystal on his right hand to maximize his speed, while he used the hidden power in his body to attack the bodyguards. Because of his speed and force, the two bodyguards had no time to react to his attacks. Bam bam, he punched on their chests, which left a big dent there the moment his fist hit their body. They were thrown backward and hit the ground hard. Zen used a lighter blow with the bodyguards. If not, they would surely suffer the same consequences as the nature creature of the noble clan in the Dragon Valley did. The nature creature was dissolved into a million small pieces with the power of his stars. "Do you still have any questions for me?" Zen asked simply. Price looked displeased at the performance of his two bodyguards. No one knew except for him how much he paid for these masters. Some masters disdained money, so they would never agree to be someone's bodyguards no matter how much money was offered to them. Therefore, Price felt lucky that he even got two nature-level masters to protect him. Since then, no one in G country dared to oppose him. He was surprised to see that his high nature-level masters couldn't withstand a single blow from Zen. They were defeated easily by a nature-level boy. Looking at them, Price knew that they could no longer stand and fight. But Price had learned a lot in the cruel world of business. He was tactful and clever. He had been also arrogant because he thought that he was invincible because of his two strongest bodyguards. But now, his belief was broken by Zen. The arrogant look on his face changed and Zen saw it in an instant. "My dear friend, I am glad that you came to G country. I apologize for my son's manners," Price said with a smile as if nothing serious had happened to his son or bodyguards. Zen couldn't just beat up Price after he apologized. He just shook his head and said, "I didn't come here to beat up your son. I just came here to ask something from your son, but he was cursing so bad that I had to teach him a lesson." "You're right, I know my son curses a lot and I'm sorry if he offended you," Price said while making an obeisance by cupping one hand in the other before his chest. Then he turned towards his son and shouted, "Quickly apologize to this friend." "But father," the young master covered his face with one hand and was not willing to submit. Apparently, he hadn't realized the situation they were facing. Zen shrugged upon seeing the reaction from the young master. Price's son was obviously inferior to him. "When I tell you to apologize, then you apologize. Why don't you just do it? If you don't, I'll beat you to death," Price commanded his son in a serious tone. He had never been mad at his son. But at this point, he had to put down his pride to protect his family. He knew that Zen had an unimaginable strength that could kill them all, so he had to be very cautious when dealing with him. Though the young master wasn't willing to apologize, he followed his father's order and bowed to Zen. He had never seen his father this scared and he also felt a wind of fear. But Zen shook his hand and said, "It's fine now. I just came here to buy your lightning horse. How much did you pay for it? I will double it." Price finally understood what Zen wanted from his son and he felt a little relieved. He smiled at Zen and said, "We are friends now. It would be embarrassing to talk about money with a friend, so I'll give you the lightning horse as a gift." "Please, don't be like that. I won't take the horse for free." "How much is it?" Zen asked. Seeing that Zen was keen on paying for the horse, Price let go of the idea. He knew that some people didn't like to owe other people a favor and he was afraid to irritate Zen if he insisted on giving it as a gift. He then said, "This lightning horse is worth 2 cubic crystals." However, he deliberately reduced the price. The lightning horse was a rare breed from the eastern region. Although they could not compete with the flying chariots that could fly people around, the lightning horse was not too much inferior. They had a reputation for speed and endurance. This lightning horse cost him 30 cubic crystals, but he just offered it for 2 cubic crystals. Then Price heard a sound of colliding cubic crystals. Zen reached out his hand and 4 cubic crystals fell from his space ring. Then he said, "I will pay you double. Do you agree?" Price grinned and shook his hand. "Yes, I will make a profit out of this horse. I can't complain." Zen nodded, turned around and mounted the horse. He looked back at Price and smiled before finally leaving. Price was a wise person and had the ability to see and understand the truth about people or situations. It was hard to imagine that his son was an idle good for nothing. Zen had wanted to jibe him about his son being a worthless piece of garbage, but he chose not to do it. He knew that Price was not a narrow-minded man, he just loved his son so much. After seeing Zen leave, the young master said unhappily, "Father, why did you sell the lightning horse? You know that it's my." Prince slapped on his son's face before he could finish his words. It was the first time that he hit his son. "I've told you to keep your nose clean and stay at home. If you offend ordinary people, I could clean up the mess for you. But if you offend those who have real great strength, you will die before you know it." Price scolded his son seriously. But he also blamed himself for his son's ignorance because he spoiled him too much. The young master covered his cheek with one hand and said pathetically, "I was wrong. But, father, you bought that lightning horse for 30 cubic crystals. Why did you lie to him and say that you bought it for 2 cubic crystals? And he thought he was being generous for giving us 4 cubic crystals." Price stared at him and sighed. If his son didn't resemble him so much, he would doubt whether he was his son. The young master was nothing like his father in terms of ability and cleverness. People always said that a great father would not raise a worthless son, but there was no cure for his son's foolishness. Chapter 154, The Commandment Hall. To be precise, the lightning horse was not just a horse, it was way beyond it as it was regarded as a kind of spiritual beast. And this unique spiritual beast was domesticated by some experienced and powerful people. The speed at which the lightning horse started running was pretty average, but as it gained momentum, the speed would get faster and faster, knowing no bounds. While carrying Zen on its back, the lightning horse was running at an extremely high speed, and it appeared like a flashing light at this time. For the several days along the way, Zen stopped occasionally to rest. After giving the lightning horse a little rest, he set off on his way without any delay. Even so, it took Zen several days to get to the capital of Burning Sky Empire. From G County. Upon arriving at the Cloud Sect, Zen left his lightning horse in a place where spiritual beasts were raised in Cloud Sect, and then headed straight to the Drizzle Peak. Zen was away for a long time to slay demons. Those disciples, who had taken part in the trial for slaying demons, had returned to the peak early. Zen might be the last one, so he'd better hurry up. Just as Zen walked up to the foot of Drizzle Peak, and prepared to climb up the mountain, he spotted 2 people. Standing along the mountain road. Dressed in a distinct purple light armor, both of them were Cloud Sect inspectors. As the 2 inspectors saw Zen, they walked towards him, pointed at his waist and said, "Show us your disciple card before you proceed onto this path." The inspectors of Cloud Sect had many permissions and rights. They mainly maintained the order for the entire Cloud Sect. But for the order at each peak, that would be something the masters should handle. So, the inspectors were in charge of all the places outside the peaks. Upon hearing their request, Zen didn't question them and just took off his disciple card and handed it to the inspectors without even giving it a moment's thought. One of the inspectors grabbed it, and after a quick glance, he gave the other inspector who was standing right next to him an expressive look in secret, before he turned to Zen and said, "Well, at the moment you can't go up the mountain. You must come with us." "What is the matter? What's wrong with my disciple card?" Crippled by confusion, Zen asked as his face appeared clouded. Evidently he did not know what was happening and what could call for such a drastic measure of reprehension. "For now just follow us, you'll know when you get there," added the inspector. "Now stretch out your hands." The moment Zen stretched out his hands, one inspector clapped his hands gently in what appeared as a silent command of a sentence. Within seconds a ray of life vitality twined around Zen's wrists tightly. As the grip got tighter, the life vitality turned into a green rope of thorns, and it bound Zen's hands tightly together, serving the purpose of handcuffs. "What is going on here?" Zen yelled out defensively as he clenched his teeth. Zen knew very well that in the Cloud Sect nothing happened beyond the rules. But to bind his hands without mentioning a concrete reason, this annoyed Zen to a great extent. One inspector sneered and said in a sarcastic tone, "Oh, didn't I tell you? Just be patient, you'll know when you get there." Bottled down with his bubbling anger, Zen closed his eyes and tried to calm himself down. He comforted himself, "We are inside the Cloud Sect. I am sure they will not dare to harm me in any way." The next moment, Zen was pushed onto a flying chariot by the 2 inspectors in a rather conspicuous manner. With an understated elegance, the flying chariot sped through the Cloud Sect and soon stopped upon reaching a hill. On the top of the hill, a gigantic iron plaque with the words, "Commandment Mount," greeted them. Just at the sight of the sign, a faint frown appeared on Zen's dull face. According to what Zen had heard earlier, Commandment Mount was the tribunal of Cloud Sect. To be specific, a disciple would be sent here to face trial when he made a mistake, or worse even committed a crime. And before he could face such a trial, he would be locked up here. And after the truth was revealed and justice was delivered, he would either be released or sent all the way down to mountain. Based purely on facts. Even though the two inspectors checked his disciple card, and knew for a fact that he was Zen, they took him straight to the Commandment Mount. Did I violate any rules of Cloud Sect without realizing it? Zen thought nervously. As the flying chariot came to a smooth slow stop, one of the inspectors nudged Zen, "Get off the chariot." He pushed Zen from the shoulders, indicating him to get off in a rather passive-aggressive manner. The inspector's attitude had changed all of a sudden. It truly reflected who they were, and Zen immediately realized that someone must have ordered them to do so. A look of sheer disdain appeared on his face. In that instant he decided that irrespective of what an extremely dangerous place the Commandment Mount was or even who was against him, he would not reflect any signs of fear and wouldn't surrender. Right after calming himself down, he followed the two inspectors up the hill. Walking up along the inclined mountain path, a black building with a stone reading, Commandment Hall, appeared across them. Owing to the sensitive ears Zen had, he could hear the harsh and intimidating sound of whips and shrill screams echoing from inside the building. All of these were the sounds of officers in the Commandment Hall torturing disciples who had violated the rules and disobeyed commands to some degree. He wondered what would possibly be done on him in such a hall of shame. After Zen entered the hall, he saw a middle-aged man dressed in purple and gold robe with flying fish on it sitting in front of the desk. He had a square face, and was black and solemn. He must be the chief judge. The two inspectors pushed Zen to the front and stepped aside in a rather synchronized obedient manner. As it caught the middle-aged man's attention, he tapped the judicial mallet on the desk with a loud thud, alerting everyone. The man commanded, "Who is this? Kneel down. Kneel down." Zen repeated as he opened his pursed lips, "I kneel to the heaven, to the ground and even before my parents, but I never kneel before others." "How dare you?" shouted the middle-aged man angrily as his facial expression froze suddenly. "You know the rules. A person who doesn't know how to behave will die miserably." "The rules? Of all the rules, do tell me who created the rule of kneeling in the hall." "The leader of Cloud Sect. Are you?" Zen inquired in a rather arrogant tone. At the start of it all, to have a better understanding of Mountain, Zen had investigated the Commandment Mount and Commandment Hall. So he was confident of his understanding about the rules and knew right from wrong in this regard. It was very clearly written that Commandment Mount did not have such great authority at the beginning, but with Cloud Sect's development, the interrogation methods were further developed and even modified. In order to improve interrogation of the disciples who violated rules, the Commandment Hall replicated methods of the Judgment Hall in the Burning Sky Empire. However, there were no rules granting these methods in Cloud Sect. As a disciple of Cloud Sect, Zen naturally and impulsively abode by all the rules of Cloud Sect. But as for the rules in the hall, that were nothing he needed to bother with. He didn't care what were they or what disobeying them meant. The middle-aged man's name was Murray Chin. He was the deputy principal of the Commandment Hall. In all these years, on his trial list, there were over 800 disciples. Murray Chin was about to lose his temper by the complete disregard of his commands and was about to show Zen what would come off by disobeying him. But then he thought of what he was told and held back his temper while adding, "All right, suit yourself and just stand there." "Do you know why I summoned you here?" "No, I don't have a clue," answered Zen as he shook his head. He really didn't know, let alone have an idea about which rule he had broken to be summoned here. Did he miss something, a small mistake or maybe even a big one? After participating in the trial for slaying demons, Zen traveled out of Cloud Sect all the time and never returned. Before he got a chance to go to Drizzle Peak, the two inspectors brought him here. Even while retrospecting, Zen could not find the smallest tiny hint as to what crime he could have committed. With a sly smile, Murray Chin asked, Hey, you sure you really don't know?" "No, not even the slightest clue. I have no reason to lie to you," said Zen, in an indifferent tone. He did nothing wrong, and he didn't disobey any rules, so he had nothing to be guilty about or even show any remorse. "Well, if you don't know, I'll help you jog your memory," said Murray Chin as he pointed at Zen. A few days back, you participated in the trial for slaying demons, but you colluded with the demon and tried to kill Zug instead. You nearly murdered a Cloud Sect disciple. He was your mate and your companion. Even if you suffer 1,000 cuts, it will not be enough for a punishment you deserve. Upon hearing Zug's name, Zen suddenly understood what commanded his sudden presence in this hall. Alas, Zen could not help sighing. These people really got a nerve. Even if they wanted to kill him, they should have made up a better excuse for carrying out their indiscretion. They just shouldn't have said that he colluded with the demon. The Burning Sky Empire and the demon had been fighting for over 1,000 years. When it came to a collusion with the demon, a human would be too scared to approach. To protect themselves, they would stay away from any topics relating to the demon simply because it would bring genocide and unfathomable wrath to their families. But Zen was not scared. Instead, he was rather calm. Even though the middle-aged man knew everything about the demon, he still tried to punish him. This indicated his urge to punish Zen with a severe penalty. Evidently, someone was behind all of this conspiracy. Zen thought for a moment. He soon realized who was behind Murray Chin. It was most probably friend Zug, namely friend the loony. Zen pulled himself out of his deep line of thoughts as he smiled and said, "You said I conspired with the demon, but now the question of the hour is, what do you want to do with me?" In cold harsh tone Murray responded, "You committed a serious crime. You should prepare for a genocide. However, I learned that your clan was not involved in it, so you will be the only one to be punished." Suddenly, Zen took 2 steps forward as he stared at Murray Chin and smiled, "Now I'm here, do you want my life? Beat me if you have the strength and capabilities. That was just your excuse for killing me. Save your energy for later." To sentence him to death after just a few words. Murray Chin must be too naive. Moreover, Zen did not fear anything, let alone the commandment hall. So without any delay, Zen blatantly stated their purpose. If they wanted to fight, he would fight, but he did not have the patience to sit through their excuses. He had to get back to Drizzle Peak. Murray Chin's facial expression changed. He sneered for a second before speaking, "Since this is what you want, guards, show him the power of the heaven-destroying cudgel. I want to beat him to death. Zen Luo, prepare for your doom." Just as Murray Chin finished speaking, 4 men appeared from the back holding 4 long golden cudgels. That would be the heaven-destroying cudgel. The cudgels were made from a special wood which had a density and strength equal to and probably even more than iron. More importantly, the wood could break through life vitality. Even if people were protected by life vitality, the heaven-destroying cudgel could easily penetrate the life vitality and pierce through the flesh. Even a nature creature would be impaled and killed. Actually, Murray Chin felt some amount of guilt. The commandment hall had no right to take a person's life, according to the Cloud Sect rules. Only the senior managers of Cloud Sect could sentence a disciple to death. The most he could do was to send disciples to Mountain. But since he was entrusted, he had to handle it in any way. Their ultimate purpose was to take Zen's life. If he wanted to take a disciple's life, he would have to go forward in a smarter manner to avoid trouble. "I can't kill him directly, but I can beat him to death," thought Murray Chin. If Zen revolted against the punishment, that would give them the license to kill him. If not, then they would beat him to death with the heaven-destroying cudgels. Zen was prepared to fight at that moment. No matter who tried to take his life, he would let them pay the price, and there was no exception. But when he saw the 4 men came in with 4 cudgels, his heart was filled with joy, a feeling so contradictory to what he thought he would feel. The last thing he feared was being beaten. Now he was at the nature level, and was worried that nobody would beat him. In this case, Zen gave up resistance. He wanted to see what would happen after suffering through the strokes. Would his strength and might increase? Chapter 155, The Heaven-Destroying Cudgel. Zen stood still, without operating his life vitality. The 4 men stood in 4 distinct positions with their heaven-destroying cudgels in hand. They aimed their weapons and struck at Zen simultaneously. The 4 of them were at grade 5 of the nature level and had extraordinary strength. Moreover, the heaven-destroying cudgels could strike the body with a force unmatched. Poof, 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 poof. The weapons hit Zen's body hard, making dull sounds. People in the commandment hall do have some methods. The ordinary nature creatures could be beaten to death if hit hundreds of times in this manner, Zen thought, still not budging an inch. But my body is a middle-grade spiritual weapon. The cudgels hit can't injure me with their moderate force. Under the beating of the cudgels, warm currents continuously surged in Zen's body, soaking his belly. The four nature creatures kept hitting at him hard. After all, it was a rare opportunity. Poof, poof, poof. They hit him more than 100 times in one breath. Zen still stood unmoved and looked at Murray, who was looking on from a distance. Murray was puzzled. The heaven-destroying cudgel was a good weapon to strike a nature creature. In the past, it had proven to be useful in beating them half to death. Why did this young man look unharmed even after being hit so many times? Hit him hard, Murray shouted. The four men were masters at grade 5 and had an endless stream of power in their bodies. At Murray's words, the force in their hands increased in an instant. In no time, sweat was built on their foreheads. Their cudgels struck blow after blow at Zen. Poof! The cudgels pounded Zen over and over, but he only felt a sense of happiness as the warmth soaked through his belly, lulling him into a kind of comfort. If the cudgels continued to thrash him, the warmth would stroke his belly all day long, and in a short period of time, his strength would increase from grade 1 of the nature level to grade 2. Unfortunately, good things didn't happen so frequently or easily. He needed to seize this opportunity with both hands to make sure it happened. If they sensed something wrong, they would stop hitting him. Suddenly, Zen twisted his face in agony and screamed. Ah, oh, he gritted his teeth and howled as if in pain, looking like he couldn't stand it. Murray saw his expression and smirked. The guy finally couldn't bear it. Beat him, hit him hard, I want to see a fight. If Zen was beaten to death, Murray would get into trouble. According to the rules, the commandment hall could not put a disciple to death. This little episode was not too troublesome for him though. In any case, someone or the other would help him cover it up. Ah, the heaven-destroying cudgels beat Zen incessantly. His screams echoed in the commandment hall. Tired of the thousands of beatings, the four men soon grew exhausted. It had taken up all of their strength. However, they soon sensed that something was wrong. Even after being beaten up for so long, Zen still stood on steady legs. The expression on his face was miserable, but his complexion seemed fine. He didn't seem injured or hurt. He actually looked like he found the hits pleasant. Was he enjoying this? What was going on? Murray too perceived that something was odd. The man screamed without inflection. His voice didn't break and he didn't choke on gasps when he yelled in pain. Did the bludgeoning actually affect him, or was he faking it? How could it not hurt him? Was he not afraid of being clubbed to death? That was possible. Murray knew that the heaven-destroying cudgel was ineffective against the masters of the illuminating soul realm, but many nature creatures who were struck by the weapon in the past eventually knelt on the ground and implored for their lives, their bloody wounds clear evidence of their pain. How could it have no effect on Zen? Impossible. Hit him hard. I don't believe you are not afraid of being beaten. The four men thrashed him harder, putting even more strength behind the blows of their cudgels. If such strong power was directed against a large boulder, it could turn it to dust. Against a block of gold or iron, it would cast a depression in it. But against Zen's body, it left no injuries whatsoever. The nature creatures didn't have bottomless stamina. After hitting him with all their strength, the four men finally huffed their breaths and gave up, feeling like they had lost. Now that they had used up all their energy, Zen dropped his masquerade and laughed out loud. Hit me then. Continue to hit me. I haven't enjoyed this enough. Seeing the expression on Zen's face, Murray heaved a deep breath, wondering if he was dealing with a monster. The four men stared back at him blankly, finding themselves in a fix. They still held the heaven-destroying cudgels in their hands. There was no point in continuing to strike the boy because he was not afraid of being beaten. The four of them were merely wasting their respective strengths. But they couldn't stop hitting him, because Murray hadn't yet ordered them to stop. They waved the heaven-destroying cudgels about, becoming more spiritless. There's no strength behind your attacks. Don't do it. Zen sighed and shook his head, but the strength in his body expanded gradually, until it shook with a tremor. When the next blow of the heaven-destroying cudgel fell on his body, it repelled against the great force in him and the weapon shattered into several pieces, falling to the ground. Zen immediately removed the life vitality rope of thorns that was tied around his wrists. My time is valuable. I didn't come back to Cloud Sect for this mischief. I know who was behind what happened today, but I advise you not to get involved with me. Otherwise you will regret it, Zen said, pointing at Murray who stood on the platform, before turning to leave. He didn't come back to Cloud Sect to participate in this farce. How dare you? You dare to revolt against me in public. Murray saw him leaving and was overjoyed. He could not take on Zen until now because he didn't have a legitimate reason to kill him before. Zen could be in league with the demon. Murray could have put him to death after charging him for this crime, but he didn't have the right to do so within the laws. So he had just convicted Zen and hoped he would be beaten to death by the cudgels. But Zen survived easily. Murray wondered what his body was made of, or why he was not fearful of being bludgeoned. If Zen had obeyed him just now, Murray wouldn't have known how to deal with him. But Zen just revolted against him in front of an audience. He ridiculed the commandment hall, which gave Murray an admissible reason. You dare rebel against the commandment hall and try to escape. According to the rules, I can kill you. Murray shouted, a judgment pen in his hand. He moved behind Zen. At the same time, he saw a shadow of a figure appearing at the gates. The intruder laughed. I come here by accident. Master Chin, why are you shouting? It was Fren. He hated Zen to the bone. Zen had beaten Yale almost to death during the trial for slaying demons. He killed Joseph too, who had been appointed as the counselor to the Imperial Army with the help of the Zug clan. The incident had angered the Zug clan. Their leader had announced that as long as any of them encountered Zen, they were allowed to take his life straight away. So Fren had come up with a plan. He told Murray to send someone to guard Drizzle Peak. When Zen finally came by, they took him to the Commandment Mount and charged him with a crime. Regardless of whether he confessed to the crime, they decided to find a way to kill him. If Zen didn't resist, they would beat him to death. If he resisted, it would be even better. In Cloud Sect, it was forbidden to kill one another for no reason. But if Zen disobeyed the order of the Commandment Hall, they were allowed to kill him in Cloud Sect within rights. It was a dead end either way, a trap especially set up for Zen. Now Zen had revolted in public, so Fren naturally happened to pass by with an intention to rightfully kill him. It was easy for the Zug clan to kill an outer disciple of the Cloud Sect. Young Master Fren, this guy didn't obey the order of the Commandment Hall. Instead, he has rebelled against us in public and tried to make an escape. I hope you can help me in this, Murray responded, playing along with the act. Zen watched Fren for a while and then turned to Murray. Do you really need to put on an act? I know what's going on, he sneered. Fren laughed at him. It doesn't matter if this is an act. Either way, you are going to die today. We want you to enjoy the show. It will be your very last source of entertainment. As Fren finished speaking, the momentum of his body increased. He was certain that this day was Zen's last. Even the gods couldn't save him now. Zen was cornered. He faced Fren in his front and Murray at his back. Still, he didn't let a hint of panic pass his face. Fren was not a master of the illuminating soul realm. Judging from his momentum, it seemed that his strength had increased since they had met last, but he was at about grade 9 of the nature level. He had not yet reached the peak level. Murray, who was approaching Zen from behind, was at the same level as Fren. As long as they were not the masters of the illuminating soul realm, Zen could handle them with his current strength. The dark life vitality surged quietly from the acupoints on Zen's arm. Fren, I said last time that my life remains in my hands only. If you want to take it, you can have a try. Unfortunately for you, you've missed the opportunity. The demonic life vitality leapt out of Zen's arm. The subtle dark purple force exuded a kind of darkness that appeared as if it could kill someone at any moment now. With your present strength, you are not qualified to take my life. But I can take yours anytime I like. Back at the auction house, Zen couldn't have admitted this to Fren, for he hadn't truly been the opponent. But today, Zen had edged through the level and become a nature creature. The change from life energy to life vitality was quite qualitative. Moreover, he had contemplated on the sun moon stars picture and grasped the power of the stars. The demonic life vitality had made a spurt of progress. The expression on Fren's face betrayed no fear. He could tell that Zen's body had undergone a transformation, but Fren had a good reputation in the Cloud Sect for his strength. Moreover, lately it had increased. Ha, you arrogant man, you are just at grade 1 of the nature level, yet you're so conceited. I wonder if someday you get to enter the illuminating soul realm, will you kill everyone in our Zug clan? I doubt you'll get the chance though, because you will be dead today. Oh, if I enter the illuminating soul realm someday. Zen wrinkled his brows as if in thought. I won't just stop with the Zug clan. If the top 7 noble clans make me unhappy, I will take all of their lives. Chapter 156. The 7 Mysterious Demon Swords. How dare you? The arrogant words of Zen had enraged Fren to a point where he saw red everywhere. Just then, everyone heard an abrupt sound of something soaring at incredible speed. Swish! From the side of the door, a thin willow leaf dart shot towards Zen. As soon as he became aware of it, Zen calmly stretched out his hand and pushed the willow leaf dart away in a gentle manner. At that moment, a charming woman entered through the door and yelled, "Friend, kill him." Upon closer look, it turned out that the woman was someone named Vivan, whom Zen had met at the Zhang clan's blessed auction house in the past. Seeing his woman had already made her move, Friend felt convinced that he did not have to wait any longer. Instantly, his hand glowed with an orange light, forming a big sword. It was the 7 mysterious demon swords, the Zhang clan's tier 4 cultivation method. After he had tossed it casually, the orange-red sword hung in the air while facing Zen. It strangely appeared as though there was an invisible man, and he was holding the sword. Then, the number of swords multiplied from 1 to several, as though someone had replicated the original sword many times. The orange light in Friend's hand flickered unceasingly, one after another, big swords appeared from each flash. In the end, there were 7 swords in the air, with seemingly 7 invisible swordsmen holding them. "Kill him, now," commanded Friend. Raising their swords, the 7 invisible swordsmen rushed towards Zen. Some went to stab him horizontally while others cut him vertically. The 7 invisible swordsmen united their efforts to ensure his defeat and marched from every possible direction to corner him. At the same time, Vivan threw the willow leaf darts, flicking them at the speed of light at Zen one after another. Seizing the opportunity, Murray sprang to attack Zen from behind. As he had taken numerous advantage of the Zhang clan, it was only natural for him to help Friend. While holding his judge's brush pen and using the life vitality as his ink, he wrote a big word in midair. "Seal." After Murray finished writing, the word, "seal," launched towards Zen in an instant. As soon as the word had reached him, his demonic life vitality vanished all at once. "What I have just done sealed off your life vitality. Let's see what you can do against it," Murray boasted smugly. Upon hearing his cocky words, instead of panicking, Zen thought calmly, since it can seal off the life vitality, perhaps it is a kind of enchanted barrier. That would mean the emerald crystal in my arm might work on it. Bah, it's just an insignificant trick to me. After saying that, Zen raised his left hand slowly. With his head held high, he hit the giant word using his fist. "It's no use trying to break my seal with brute force alone," said Murray, shaking his head. Then he scorned disapprovingly, "You must be dreaming if you think that's all it'll take." However, to his surprise, blood-red energy gushed out from Zen's fist when it touched his seal word and ultimately tainted it. In a second, red cracks like a spider's web appeared on the word. Then a strange cracking sound followed, which made Murray's eyes widen in shock. His seal enchanted barrier broke to pieces after Zen's single blow, and then it vanished into the air without much of a resistance. After throwing a sarcastic look in Murray's direction, Zen deflected a series of willow leaf darts that Vivan had thrown at him. Murray could not help but remain speechless. Since Vivan was not that strong, Zen did not worry about the willow leaf darts. Even if any of her attempts had managed to strike him, it could hardly cause any trouble. In Zen's opinion, the real threat was Friend's 7 swords, as they looked rather powerful. These 7 swords were from a tier 4 cultivation method, which could indicate something was likely unique about them. Since it seemed as though 7 invisible swordsmen controlled a sword each, dodging all the attacks was going to be quite a headache. Even if he could easily deflect the swords, how would he destroy swordsmen who did not actually exist? To other people, such a troublesome question might render them nervous, but not Zen. Soon, he thought of a strategy on how to deal with the 7 swords. Whoosh! Carrying a powerful gust of wind, an invisible swordsman went for Zen's head with his sword. Contrary to Friend's expectation, Zen did not dodge his attack. In fact, he did not even look like he was going to counter the attack. Instead, in what could only be the simplest way possible, Zen reached out directly with his hand to catch the sword. Thud! With a playful grin, Zen gripped the hilt of the sword effortlessly, and then he pointed it at Friend. A taunting glint appeared in his eyes as he watched the priceless reaction on Friend's face. Hiding the shock behind a brave facade, Friend narrowed his eyes and said, "It's good that you can catch a sword. Unfortunately, you only have 2 hands. I don't know how you catch the other 6 swords." Under Friend's command, the other 6 swords launched a siege on Zen from different directions. "Take it easy, you just wait and see," Zen replied humorously. The demonic life vitality surged out of his hand and seeped into the sword in his hand. In a moment, the color of the sword changed from orange to purple-black. Upon seeing the transformation, Zen let out a satisfied sigh. Reassured by the familiar color, he let go of the sword. This time, however, he had taken full control of it. As Zen signaled, the purple-black sword followed his every intention and hovered in front of him. Bang bang bang, the other 6 orange swords clashed with the purple-black sword one after another, as Zen maneuvered it expertly and blocked each fierce attack. The color of Friend's face drastically changed while he watched the unbelievable scene before his eyes. Never in his dreams did he imagine that someone, let alone Zen, could take away one of his swords. On top of that, the man had total power over it now. Friend wondered, what strange cultivation method has he been practicing? Nevertheless, it was not the time for Friend to think about that. Because he wanted to kill Zen as soon as possible, he did not have any more time to waste. Though he had lost a sword, there were still 6 left in his control. And so, while Friend waved his hand again, the invisible swordsman raised his 6 swords. On his command, they were ready to attack Zen. All of a sudden, some black and purple spots appeared on his 6 remaining weapons. Friend could only watch in horror as the spots scattered all over the swords. What is going on? Friend exclaimed. With his eyes wide open, Friend noticed that the remaining 6 swords had lost contact with him. What just happened was beyond absurd. In a state of helplessness, he watched the colors of his 6 swords change from orange to purple-black. I said you are no longer qualified to take my life. With your current strength, you should run whenever you see me. It's a pity you were not smart to believe my words, said Zen seriously. After the transformation of the demonic life energy into demonic life vitality, its ability to absorb and transform other energies became more frightening while the speed had greatly improved. When Zen used the purple-black sword to prevent the attacks of Friend's other 6, the opportunity for their blades to clash arose. It was at that moment when the demonic life vitality of the purple-black sword transferred into the other 6 swords along the gaps of the blades. Although infiltrated by only a small amount of the demonic life vitality, it was enough for the rest of Zen's strategy to work. The demonic life vitality continuously altered Friend's life vitality at high speed. As a result, it was inevitable for Zen to seize command of the 6 swords eventually. When Zen raised his arms, 7 purple-black swords in midair spiraled around him. Simultaneously, Vivian had not given up her attack. Once again, she threw 10 willow leaf darts at Zen. However, he glanced at the woman who was hot, in both temperament and her body figure, with a cold smile. One of the swords brushed in front of Zen and slightly knocked down those willow leaf darts. After deflecting every incoming attack, the sword rejoined the rank as though nothing had happened. Under Zen's control, the 7 swords aimed upward, whirling faster and faster, and getting closer to each other until finally, they united and compressed into a huge sword. Oh goodness! Exclaimed Friend, astonished. This is the heavenly sword. How did you know how to use our Zug clan's 7 mysterious demon swords? Even with his own eyes, it was hard to believe what was happening. The last and strongest move of the Zug clan's 7 mysterious demon swords was the unification of the 7 swords known as the Heavenly Sword, a technique that was extremely difficult to cultivate. Only someone who reached the state of the illuminating soul realm could achieve such a remarkable feat. Therefore, even Friend himself could not utilize this skill at the moment. Only some elders of the Zug clan who were at illuminating soul realm could achieve the Heavenly Sword. It was astonishing that Zen had not only seized all of the 7 swords, but he also succeeded in condensing them into the Heavenly Sword. Therefore, it was no wonder that Friend was so stunned. Unbeknownst to him, Zen did not actually know how to use the Zug clan's cultivation method of the 7 mysterious demon swords. All he had achieved was merging the 7 swords into a big one by utilizing the characteristics of the demonic life vitality. What a heavenly sword was, or how to activate one, was beyond his knowledge. A genuine heavenly sword contained a trace of heavenly intent. At his present cultivation level, the heavenly intent was not something Zen could master. However, although the enormous sword in front of Zen did not contain heavenly intent, it still gave people a strong sense of deterrence. It was this sense of deterrence that frightened Friend, as he thought that Zen could use the heavenly sword. As he had witnessed the strong power of the heavenly intent emitting from the sword when family elders wielded it, Friend knew the heavenly sword's vast capabilities. Frightened by the huge sword, Friend ran away for his life at once. In his haste to take cover, there was no time for him to distinguish whether the power that emanated from the sword was the real heavenly intent or not. As he was so convinced by its authenticity, he did not even think to doubt it at all. Oh, so you want to escape now? It is too late. As soon as Zen waved his hand, the huge sword, which was about 10 feet long and several feet wide, directly shot towards Fren. "Oh, no, stop it. If you kill him, you will die," shouted Murray quickly. He never imagined Zen would dare to kill Fren. Does this fellow really know no fear? If he kills Fren in Cloud Sect, who else could protect him? Thought Murray. "Don't run, Fren, I'll kill him," stated Vivian fiercely. Soaked in an unknown evil spirit, Vivian's eyes turned blood red and her pale skin bloomed with red spots. Even the willow leaf darts she thrust were contaminated with blood. After noticing these details, Zen deemed that she must have been using some mysterious cultivation method. "Are you still not giving up?" asked Zen, looking at the woman incredulously. The huge sword not only blocked the willow leaf darts, but also absorbed the blood energy of the darts. With its huge side panel like a door, the huge sword flew over and touched Vivian's enchanting body that had made many men think about it day and night. Bang! Knocked by the sword, Vivian flew against the wall with a muffled noise. Then slowly, she collapsed and lowered her head while losing consciousness. Chapter 157, Saint Vianna. At the same time, behind Zen, Murray wrote a big kill in the air with his brush pen before rushing toward Zen. Murray couldn't calm down anymore. If Zen killed Fren, the Zug clan would blame Murray. Then he would be in trouble. Zen glimpsed at the kill and knocked it hard with his left elbow. With a snap, the kill was crushed. "Fren, you are so timid. You couldn't even protect your woman. I really don't understand why the others call you loony." With that, Zen lifted his sword and rushed after Fren. Fren usually came across as crazy and arrogant. Of course, it showed how powerful he was, as only powerful men could afford to behave in such an eccentric manner. However, Fren found himself too weak in front of Zen. He was no match for Zen at all. It's impossible, since he has just reached the nature level, how could he be so powerful? Fren thought. Fren was so scared that he picked up speed. He wanted to get rid of Zen as soon as possible and dared not to turn around at all. However, Zen chased after him and showed no intention of letting Fren go. "Fren, running is useless. Show me how you are going to kill me now." Zen wielded his sword as he pursued Fren. After rushing out of the commandment hall, both men ran wild in the commandment mount. "Zen, if you kill me, you'll be the enemy of the Zug clan. Since you don't come from an influential family, how will you face the Zug clan?" Fren said, hoping Zen would let go of him for the sake of his family. "Since I have already killed Joseph, I don't care about the repercussions of killing another member of the Zug clan." Zen answered. "I'm more important than Joseph. I'm the hope of our family, and they will not allow anyone to kill me." Fren cried. Had it not been for the dignity of a noble clan, Fren would have knelt before Zen and begged for mercy. "Really, they won't allow anyone to kill you? Then let me see if I can kill you." With that, Zen swung his massive sword at Fren. "Wait." Just then, a man's voice loudly echoed in the air. His voice was so loud, like the booming of thunder, that Zen felt his eardrum go numb. Zen's face darkened when he heard the voice. On the contrary, Fren's face lit up. He shouted in a hurry, "Saint Vianna, help! You have no chance now. Nobody can save your life." With that, Zen swung his super huge sword at Fren. The sword left a streak of light in its wake. "Young man, if you kill Fren, you will pay 100-fold for your actions. And no one in Cloud Sect will be able to help you." Saint Vianna approached quickly. However, he was still so far from Fren that he could only hope to stop Zen by threatening him. Zen hesitated for a short moment and then said lightly, "Too many people have threatened me. I hate being threatened. Now, Fren must die." "You." Saint Vianna's face flushed with anger. He was obviously enraged by Zen's arrogance. "Young man, you'll pay for your arrogance," he shouted. "I'll kill Fren, no matter what it takes," Zen said and swung his sword at Fren without any hesitation. With a puff, Fren was cut in half. Blood spilled all over the ground. Now, even an immortal couldn't bring him back to life. If Saint Vianna had tried any other method to persuade Zen instead of resorting to threats, Zen might have spared Fren's life. In fact, Saint Vianna's threat only served to increase Zen's hatred for Fren. "Young man, you're risking your neck. How dare you kill someone in Cloud Sect? Go to perdition." Saint Vianna flew into a rage when Zen turned a deaf ear to him and killed Fren. High in the air, Saint Vianna threw a palm at Zen. Saint Vianna's hands were bony, like dead branches. When he reached out, his palm suddenly grew into a palm shadow of over 100 feet in size. The palm shadow was so powerful that The stones, flowers, and grass around Zen were crushed by its impact. The floor around Zen sank and formed a concave palm print on the ground. Zen could hardly breathe under its impact. The palm's shadow is so powerful, and it hasn't even reached me. If I'm hit by it, I will die or be gravely injured. Thinking about this, Zen commanded his huge black sword to fly to the palm's shadow. When they collided, the huge sword was crushed, and the palm's shadow remained unchanged. Seeing that life vitality was ineffective against the palm's shadow, Zen felt an unprecedented sense of crisis. When the enormous black sword disappeared, the palm's shadow kept inching toward Zen. Just then, Zen saw some sparkly stars floating above the palm's shadow. That's the star power from the sun-moon stars picture. Zen thought. These stars were small in size. However, their power would be terrible when they exploded at the same time. Zen wondered if they could destroy the palm's shadow. Explode. The stars exploded as ordered by Zen. Because Saint Vianna was extremely powerful and Zen knew that he was no match for Saint Vianna, he had no choice but to instruct the stars to erupt. The star power was released. Boom, boom, boom. Overwhelming energy was emitted after the explosion of each small star. While a star could not destroy the giant palm shadow, after the explosion of thousands of stars, the overwhelming energy they released cracked the palm shadow. Because Saint Vianna had been furious, he had summoned all his power to his palm. The fatal palm was his unique skill, and he had defeated countless masters with it. He had thought that the arrogant young man would be crushed under his palm. However, to his surprise, his palm shadow had been crushed by a string of explosions. Young man, you are really something. But I don't believe I cannot defeat you today. Like pouring oil on flames, Zen's act of resistance enraged Saint Vianna further. He waved his bony hands again, and two palm shadows appeared. When they were about to approach Zen, Zen's eyes glittered, and he withdrew at an incredible speed. Although he knew that he couldn't dodge the attack, Zen had to try as he would die if these two palm shadows hit him. Just then, a beam of red light shone in the distance. A brief moment later, two green lights floated toward him. One was an astonishingly beautiful young woman dressed in purple. She stood on a flying chariot, her black hair fluttering in the air. She shouted, "Saint Vianna, please don't hurt him." She was cold and dignified when she spoke, like a saintess with great moral virtue. She was Aura, Zen's master at Drizzle Peak. The other person was a white-haired, affable old man who looked as kind as a neighbor's grandfather. He floated in the air with his fingers crossed behind his back. "Vianna, stop," the old man shouted. If Aura had come alone, Saint Vianna might not have heeded her request. However, he had to take the old man's words seriously. Killing this young man is not challenging. So it's unnecessary for me to do it now. Thinking about this, Saint Vianna withdrew his palms. He turned to the old man and clasped hands in greeting. However, his voice was filled with anger. "Casper, why do you stop me?" he asked. The amiable old man was one of the 10 saints of Cloud Sect. Although Saint Vianna was also one of the 10 saints, he only ranked 10th, whereas Casper ranked 3rd. Saint Casper smiled slightly as he flew toward Saint Vianna. He had a graceful figure, like an immortal. "Don't kill this young man. You must not kill him," he said. Saint Vianna snorted. He broke Cloud Sect's rules. According to the rules, those who kill disciples in Cloud Sect should be executed. Why shouldn't I kill him? Because he is my disciple. Aura stepped on the flying chariot and flew forward. She said coldly, "If my disciple commits a crime, I should be allowed to decide the appropriate punishment. Besides, if you kill him before you know what happened, how will you explain your actions to the others?" Saint Vianna stared at Aura for a while. A wicked smile grew on his face. You're the girl from the palace, right? So what? Aura lifted her chin in defiance and replied with an even colder voice. Very few people dared mention her identity in front of Aura because most people were scared of her. However, Saint Vianna wasn't afraid of her. If anything, he didn't take her seriously. "I'm a saint at Cloud Sect. I have the right to punish our disciples. Whether I know about the incident that led to the crime or not is none of your business." "Really? Do you think Cloud Sect was built in heaven? Let me tell you, it's still on the land of the Burning Sky Empire." Aura shot back. She didn't want to compromise. Saint Vianna had been trying to suppress Aura with Cloud Sect but was ridiculed by her instead. No matter how well-known Cloud Sect was, it couldn't be separated from the Burning Sky Empire. Aura came from the Su family, and the Emperor of the Burning Sky Empire came from the Su family too. The empire belonged to the Su family. Ha, how can an unfavored child represent royalty and the emperor of the Burning Sky Palace? Saint Vienna said ironically. Vienna, don't talk nonsense, Casper interrupted. Apparently, Saint Vienna had said something improper. However, Saint Vienna was reluctantly to compromise too. Casper, why don't you let me finish? Am I wrong? Chapter 158, The Court Trial. The harsh words that tumbled out of Saint Vienna's mouth saddened Aura quite deeply. It seemed like it had reminded her of something so painful, that it made her inconsolable to the point of not saying a word. The grieving look in her eyes looked quite heartbreaking. Phew, at that moment, a beam of silver light that came from the ground shot at Saint Vienna. In turn, he slightly waved his hand and simply flicked the flash of light away. At the same time, Zen had jumped right onto Aura's flying chariot, which was more than 100 feet from the ground and stood next to her. You old thing, how can you bully a little girl just because you are older? It's really a shame, he said. Now, Aura was Zen's master in martial arts even if she was only several years older than Zen. However, Zen had said that she was only a little girl, which made her feel somewhat strange. However, compared to Saint Vienna who was more than 360 years old, she had to admit that she could be called a little girl indeed. A smell emanated from Zen who stood in front of Aura, and she noticed it. She knew that he was just as nervous as her. The masters of Cloud Sect and all the noble clans knew why Aura came to Cloud Sect and was willing to be a humble master at Drizzle Peak. The reason why she came here wasn't a secret, but no one had ever spoken it out. Nobody had dared to remind the reason in front of Aura. When she reached Drizzle Peak, Aura hoped that she could forget everything about that and adapt herself to her new life as soon as possible. However, Saint Vienna had ruined that today when he spoke out the reason without consideration of Aura's feelings, which made her suffer a seemingly endless pain. It was a relief that Zen could stand up to help her. Saint Vienna's eyebrows shot up angrily at Zen's words. He was positively fuming with anger. What did you say? What have you said just now? Are you afraid to say it again? He questioned Zen angrily. Since Saint Vienna was one of the 10 saints of Cloud Sect who were always adored by the people, and led comfortable lives just like immortals, no one dared to offend him. However, this boy in front of him dared talk to him impertinently. It infuriated Saint Vienna who was already inherently irritable. This was a fight around the corner waiting to happen. Yet, Zen didn't seem to be bothered by this as he firmly stood by his convictions. What, am I wrong? You are hundreds of years old. Aren't you an old thing? My master is only 20 years old. Compared to you, she is only a little girl, but should you bully such a little girl? It's true, why am I afraid to say that again? Zen said in a serious voice. He then turned around to Aura and asked, Master Su, am I right? When Zen turned to her, Aura's orbs locked with Zen's. His words had moved her deeply. Ever since Zen went to Cloud Sect, he had been causing troubles but now, he had bravely stood up to help her just in time. He really was a good person. Aura nodded at Zen and turned to look at Saint Vienna. Yes, why is he afraid to say it again? Saint Vienna, it is nothing if he says it again. He can also say it for hundreds or thousands of times, or even make it up as a song or a poem to sing or recite everywhere, but what can you do about it? She said coldly. Her words were truth, but only added fuel to the fire that was Saint Vienna's temper. You, Aura, don't think that you being in a noble position can prevent me from killing your disciple in front of you. Saint Vienna said in a bitingly cold tone. Right now, he really had a strong intention to kill Zen. Despite his threat, a smile graced Aura's lips and her eyes were full of determination. Yes, you can, of course you can, but can you kill me? She said. No, of course I can't kill you because you belong to the royal family with a noble position, but you can never stop me from killing the boy standing by you. Saint Vienna harshly replied. At this, Aura only raised one fine brow. Sure, I can't stop you from killing him, but... She deliberately paused in her words and turned over her slender hand. A token appeared, and etched on it were the words, the Emperor. The token she held was the Emperor's token which could command the man in the Burning Sky Palace. All of their eyes were transfixed on the token in Aura's hand. Have you ever seen the token? If you kill him, I will use the Emperor's token to order the man in the Burning Sky Palace to kill you. I believe you can't run away even if you hide yourself to the ends of the earth. Aura shot back. She looked really serious and her determined voice made people know that she would resist until the very last moment. The arrogance was suddenly drained from Saint Vienna's face when he saw the token. As a saint of Cloud Sect, killing a person in front of the princess was not a big deal. But the princess had the Emperor's token. However, the Emperor's token was too valuable for the little girl to just use it to save an insignificant outer disciple. "Will you waste an Emperor's token to save this guy?" he asked in a low voice. His aggressiveness a while ago seemed to be replaced by calmness for now. "How will you know if you don't try?" Aura said coolly. Her words shocked Saint Viana and his face wore an unreadable expression. "Okay, but you have so many things to deal with in Cloud Sect, you can't keep him alive all the time. What's more, even if I forgive him now, Cloud Sect won't forgive him, since he has killed a disciple of Cloud Sect. He has broken the sect's rules and everyone knows, so you can't help him even though you are the princess," he said angrily. "I won't give protection to Zen if he really did something wrong, but punish him according to the rules of Cloud Sect. However, you as a saint, just want to kill Zen without any forethought, so could you tell me why?" she asked back in return. Even though Saint Viana had changed topics to Cloud Sect's rules, Aura was quite clever and she surely had something to say in defense. Now, Saint Viana only grunted wordlessly in response. Then after a while, he said, "Anyway, this boy must give a reason why he killed the disciple today." From where he stood, Zen shot him a truly incredulous look. "Reason, you old thing, only after I finished the trial for slaying demons, I was taken here by some people without any reason before going back to Drizzle Peak. They said without any evidence that I was a spy of the demons and beat me heavily with Murray, but they found they couldn't kill me easily. So, they ganged up with Friend to let me die. Do you think I would just stand there and let them kill me casually? Do you think I would die willingly?" Zen asked, fury and seriousness clouding his voice. "I want to know, if you were me, what would you do?" he added. However, Saint Viana only said, "Those are your own words. They are not believable." After he said those words, he slowly flew from the air to the ground. He went to Murray, who had remained silent and looked deep in thought. "Murray, as a judge of Commandment Hall, it is your duty to explain clearly what has happened today," Saint Viana said. At this, Murray rolled his eyes and a wicked grin was plastered on his face. "My honored Saint Viana, please don't believe this guy who told a lie. The information received by Commandment Hall indicated that the guy conspired with the demons during his trial for slaying demons, and as a judge of Commandment Hall, it is my responsibility to keep the disciples of Cloud Sect safe. However, if this boy was really possessed by a demon general and entered into our Cloud Sect, what should we do? Thus, I have to take some actions to find out if he is really a spy," he said. Saint Viana nodded in agreement. "Murray, you are right, please go on," he said. "It was really unexpected that he didn't cooperate with us and he refused to be examined by Commandment Hall. What's worse, when he was in Commandment Hall, he has said something very offensive. Because of his arrogance and improper words, I asked to beat him to give him a lesson, but unfortunately, he turned around and ran away. Just at that moment, I met Friend who was passing by, so I asked him for help. However, I have never thought Zen would be so cruel. He killed Friend. You have witnessed all the following things, Saint Viana," Murray finished. A smirk was etched on his lips, because he knew that he was good at slandering other people's names. He was more than familiar with all the skills about framing other people. In addition to that, he had always harmed innocent people, so it was a no-brainer for him to frame Zen. After Murray finished talking, Saint Viana turned to Saint Casper. "Casper, now you know that this boy killed Friend and he broke the rules of Cloud Sect, so please tell us how to punish him," he said. Even from where he stood, Zen heard Murray's words and it made him mad with rage. "Murray, you are lying and you deliberately swap the right for wrong. Dare you swear what you have said is true?" he breathlessly asked. "If I, Murray, has told a lie, I will be struck and killed by lightning," Murray simply swore with a smile. For him, to give such a swear came rather easy. "Are you satisfied?" he added. At this point, Saint Viana went back to his arrogant self. "This boy should be killed," he declared. Their current situation put Saint Casper in a dilemma. According to Murray's words, Zen had undeniably broken the rules and should be punished. As a saint of Cloud Sect, he understood the importance of following the rules in dealing with different matters from the establishment of Cloud Sect to its development, or the whole Cloud Sect would be out of order. If Murray's words were true, he would have no reason to protect Zen. What was more, Aura was too straightforward, which upset Casper very much. However, Casper didn't expect that Aura would retort back. "Okay, so I asked to have a court trial for Zen. She said. Court trial? Well, it's easy to say. But who gave this boy the right to have a court trial of Cloud Sect? Saint Vianna said haughtily. The so-called court trial in Cloud Sect was mainly used to judge someone outstanding who seriously violated the rules and had a controversial behavior. So far, the court trial had never been organized for an outer disciple. Only the elites of Cloud Sect were qualified enough to be judged through a court trial. The court trial requested by Aura made Casper feel uncomfortable and awkward. The last court trial was just organized 2 years ago, and if we organize the court trial just for such a little thing, is it, he trailed off, supposed to ask a question? I insist on having a court trial, Aura still asserted firmly. Saint Vianna, you have thought it is indisputable to kill Zen. Are you now afraid to have the trial? She added. Afraid, Saint Vianna said mockingly and laughed. Why am I afraid to have the trial? I witnessed with my own eyes that Zen had killed Fren, so why I am afraid? He continued. Okay, now I am going to apply for the court trial, and I will do everything well so you two will not be bothered by the application, Aura said calmly. Her alluring but sharp eyes glittered with a hint of cunningness. Well, let the boy live 2 more days, but he must be kept in Commandment Mount and you can't take him away. Saint Vianna ordered. In return, Aura cast a comforting look at Zen. Sorry, you have to stay here for a couple of days, but don't worry, no one can frame you up once the court trial is organized. She reassured him. A smile lit up Zen's face as he looked at Aura. Master Su, I am not worried at all. My life is not valuable, and anyone can come to kill me on the condition that he is powerful enough. He told her. As he said those words, Zen shot Saint Vianna a knowing look. After that, Aura maneuvered her flying chariot and landed it on the ground. Before the court trial, Zen had to be kept in Commandment Mount. A squadron of officers had arrived to take him away. Just as Zen was about to be escorted to leave the scene, he suddenly thought of something. He turned to Aura and asked her in a low voice, Master Su, could you tell me who was judged by the court trial 2 years ago? His question had Aura go quiet for a while before she answered, Yan. At this, Zen managed to plaster a smile on his face. Who held that court trial? And who prosecuted? He asked again. Can I tell you later? Aura said with a hint of discomfort in her voice. She shook her head and truthfully, she didn't want to answer his questions. Please tell me, Zen begged in a calm but steadfast voice, as he stared at Aura with burning eyes. Chapter 159, Fight Hand to Hand. The longer Zen stared at Aura the more she felt as though she were being grilled by fire. After a long while, she said, it was the young clan who prosecuted, and Saint Vianna was in charge of the judgment, as well as Saint Adrian. Oh, I see. Zen smiled faintly and turned back to Saint Vianna again with endless killing intention in his eyes. Zen wouldn't let the young clan go. And he wouldn't let Saint Vianna and Saint Adrian go either. Zen knew about Yan. She wouldn't make a mistake like this. She must have suffered great injustice and humiliation in the major trial. All these people must die. Zen walked to Murray and swore secretly at the same time. Murray told the people in the commandment hall to detain Zen and take him away. As Zen was leaving, he passed the platform. Vivan, who had been lying unconscious on the ground, woke up. During the fight, Vivan had attacked Zen with the willow leaf darts. Zen had retaliated by ordering the massive sword to hit her. Thrown to the wall, Vivian fainted. The moment Vivan woke up, she had a bad feeling. Fren. After standing, she saw Fren. His body lay in 2 halves. Seeing that, she became extremely grieved and cried out. At the same time, she turned to Zen with hatred in her eyes and said, I will kill you. Zen glanced at her indifferently and shook his head. This woman had courage and insight. It appeared that her hatred for him would be unmitigated, so he stopped and smiled, if you get the chance. Zen left with the people of the commandment hall after speaking. There was a prison for temporary detainees on the mountain behind the commandment hall. At Cloud Sect, some people called it the Small Hell Mountain. As many disciples were tossed into prison without trial. Sometimes, the detainees were locked at Small Hell Mountain for more than half a year. As Zen followed the people of the commandment hall to the mountain behind, he saw several circles made of round stones on the ground. Many runes were engraved on the stones. Sir, what are the stones and runes used for? Zen asked as he continued to follow the men. Someone from the commandment hall snorted, these runes are of great use. The mountain behind our commandment hall is not as big as mountain. If some of you guys fight, won't the mountain be destroyed? So Cloud Sect set these runes to confine your life vitality. Can these runes confine life vitality? Zen was shocked. Hee, you don't believe it? You can try, the man continued. Apparently, he had come across many people with the same reaction as Zen. Zen nodded and then tried to summon his demonic life vitality, but after he focused on his belly, he felt no movement. Neither did he see demonic life vitality. It is true, Zen frowned. He felt insecure about his life vitality being confined. If someone attacked him, Zen would be unable to resist, and he could only depend on the strength of his physical body to defend himself. On the mountain behind the commandment hall, there was a flat muster station, which was the temporary prison of the commandment mount. The stones and runes extended till here. When Zen entered, he found many people in the muster station. All right, since you are here, be well behaved. Not only is your life vitality confined in the muster station, but you can't run away either. I advise you not to think about any trick or risk your life. When that man was about to leave with the others from the commandment hall, he suddenly turned and addressed the other people in the muster station. This is your new friend. Give him a good greeting. It was not difficult to understand his subtle message. He had told the disciples locked in the muster station to greet Zen. In fact, on the way here, Murray had told him to do so. Zen was not a fool. He understood exactly what was implied by that message. But Zen didn't want to make trouble. Since he was in prison, he planned to be well behaved. He knew he had to stay for 2 days and wait for news from Aura. There were about 70 or 80 people in the muster station. Seen from their robes, they were a mix of inner disciples and outer disciples. They gathered in groups of 3 to 5 people. When Zen entered the muster station, they whispered to each other and spared Zen unfriendly glances from time to time. In no time, in the middle of the muster station, a disciple dressed in a black robe stood and walked to Zen. The disciple in the black robe was tall and big. His stomach was unnaturally round and fat. He was a fatty. The fatty swaggered to Zen and lifted his brows as he looked Zen up and down. He pointed at Zen's nose and stated, "Bloke, the place where you are sitting is my domain." Zen looked at the fatty and felt as though everyone in the muster station was laughing at him. He stood and found another corner to sit in. Zen didn't want to make trouble during his 2-day stay. But that fatty didn't let Zen go easily. He walked 2 steps forward and laughed, "I am sorry. This is also my domain. Where can I stay?" Zen asked. "You." The fatty grinned, "Ha, a newcomer can only stay there." Afterward, the fatty pointed to the left side of the muster station. The corner housed the shared toilet for the disciples in prison. The fatty meant that Zen could only stay in the toilet. All the disciples heard what the fatty had said and burst into laughter. A pleasant expression filled their faces at Zen's misfortune. Zen didn't say anything. Instead, he closed his eyes. Apparently, this fatty was purposely annoying him under someone's order. He was not in the mood to respond to the provocation. "I am talking to you. Didn't you hear me?" The fatty saw that what he said was ineffective and restrained his smile. He would play the tyrant here and wouldn't be benevolent. On the contrary, he was ruthless. Zen opened his eyes and glanced at the fatty indifferently before closing his eyes again. "You asked for this." The fatty raised his leg. He intended to kick Zen. However, before his leg could connect with Zen, Zen leaned away and dodged the attack. The life vitality of everybody in prison was confined. Since they wanted to fight, the detainees could only depend on the pure strength of their physical body. Zen had closed his eyes to meditate. Because the life vitality couldn't be summoned here, he was unable to cultivate. He tried to communicate with the cyan dragon sculpture in his mind. He wanted to see if he could borrow the power of the dragon scales since life vitality was confined in the prison. Zen was pleasantly surprised to find that the runes didn't confine the power of the dragon scales. When the fatty was about to kick him, he leaned away and avoided it. Then he opened his eyes and summoned all his strength to his leg. Zen dashed toward the fatty. The fatty sneered when he saw that Zen chose to hit back. He stretched out his big hand like a cattail leaf fan and aimed it at Zen. This fatty had been cultivating a special thurgy from childhood. After cultivating it, he became fatter and fatter. This was the price of the thurgy. The longer a person cultivated the thurgy, the fatter he would become. What people didn't know was that great power and strength was hidden under all the fat. Each of the Cloud Sect disciples who were locked in prison had immense power. If they could summon their life vitality, the fatty's strength would only be ranked among the top 10. But because everybody's life vitality was confined, and this fatty had endless body strength, the fatty had been able to defeat them all. None of the disciples had been able to win against the fatty in terms of pure physical strength in a hand-to-hand fight. The disciples from Cloud sect couldn't help but shake their heads when they saw that Zen chose to fight the fatty. They all thought that Zen would die. If this bloke was slapped by the fatty, he would probably be unable to stand. Anyone who had experienced the power of the fatty's palm shared the same thought. But when Zen dashed at the fatty, he stretched out his hand and gripped the fatty's hand. At the same time, the power of the dragon scales was channeled to Zen's hand. Poof! The expression on the fatty's face changed. He felt that his opponent had strength that was identical to his. No way! Anyone who had dared to challenge the fatty since his childhood stood no chance in a fight using only pure physical strength. The bloke in front of the fatty was just at the first grade of the nature level. How could he resist the fatty based on physical strength? But the truth was before his eyes. After Zen gripped the fatty's hand, he knocked with his backhand and jumped with one leg. Zen climbed onto the fatty's back and twisted the fatty's hand. With the other hand, Zen pinched the back of the fatty's neck. Then Zen said coldly, "Don't bother me. Otherwise, I will rip your neck to pieces." While speaking, Zen applied more strength to pinch the back of the fatty's neck. The fatty was apparently not easy to subdue. When Zen used more force, the fatty shook his neck. With so much smooth fat and meat on his neck, he was able to shake off Zen's grip. At the same time, the fatty turned and grabbed Zen. Then he lifted his arm, and Zen found that his feet were no longer touching the ground. After lifting Zen, the fatty spun him in the air. When the speed increased, the fatty threw Zen suddenly. He smashed Zen on a wall at the edge of the prison. Bang! The wall collapsed at impact, and Zen was buried under the rubble. The fatty spat on the ground, "You are too young to fight me using only your physical strength." The stones rocked as Zen attempted to stand. He smiled and shouted, "I didn't want to make trouble. I have considered staying here peacefully. However, I have changed my mind. Since it is boring here, I will get good exercise when fighting you." After saying that, Zen kicked the broken stones aside and walked to the fatty. A cautious expression was reflected in the fatty's eyes. After being smashed, this bloke could stand up calmly. It meant that the bloke was not as easy to handle as he appeared to be. But it didn't mean that the fatty was afraid of Zen. The fatty had confidence in his physical strength. The disciples in the muster station realized that the fatty had met a strong opponent today. Chapter 160, An Unfair Trial. Even though the fatty had beaten the imprisoned disciples who were good at using their life vitality to fight, none were convinced of him. If the runes had not limited their life vitality, the disciples would have proved that they were much better than the fat guy. The boy, who had just been brought in, seemed to have the same talent as the disciples here. He didn't get hurt when the fat guy hit him. In any way, he was no worse than the fat guy. The smartest thing for you to do is to lie on the floor and pretend to be dead. Now that you have chosen to stand and fight, don't blame me for not being kind to you." As soon as the fat guy had finished, he rushed toward Zen. The last thing Zen, who had dragon scales and a spiritual weapon body, was afraid of was hand-to-hand combat. Seeing that the fat guy intended to charge at him like a wild animal, Zen ran toward the fat guy at the same pace and posture. When it came to physical confrontation, logger people would always have an advantage. Before Zen hit the fat guy, he summoned the strength of over 100 dragon scales and concentrated it on his shoulders. The two men slammed into each other. "He's so small, I'm afraid he'll be crushed to pieces by the fat guy." The boy thinks that he is strong and wants to fight the fat guy. Does he not want to live? The disciples of Cloud sect whispered to one another. Bang! A dull noise echoed through the prison when the two men's bodies collided with each other. The fat guy felt like he had hit a high mountain. Zen's strength was as endless as the tide of the sea. The result of this confrontation stunned everyone. Compared with the fat guy's huge body, Zen looked extremely thin and small. Unexpectedly, the fat guy did not seem to have any impact on him, and he remained firmly where he was. The fat guy, however, took several steps back after hitting Zen. Then he suddenly lost his balance and fell to the ground with his big tummy like a ball. Zen squinted and slowly walked over to the fat guy. He glanced at the fat guy who was lying on the floor, then squatted down, and asked, "Do you want to do that again?" The fat guy felt as though his bones were broken. His face was white with pain. He now realized how powerful Zen was. He was much better than him in terms of both strength and body. Faced with such an outcome, no one dared say anything more. The whole muster station prison was shrouded in silence. The rule in prison was that the winner was the king. Before Zen came, the fat guy was the strongest person at the muster station. Today, however, Zen beat him. As a result, no one else dared to embarrass him anymore. They all knew that to challenge Zen was to humiliate themselves. Zen got up, walked to the corner, and sat down. He ignored the fat guy who was still lying on the ground. Since I can't practice here, I'd better keep my eyes shut, Zen comforted himself. As time went by, the sun rose and then set. 2 days later, 2 people from the commandment hall took Zen away. Before Zen entered the commandment hall, he felt the energy from several great masters. As soon as he stepped into the commandment hall, Zen saw that the room was filled with people. Zen's gaze fell upon Saint Vianna. Saint Vianna looked sharply at Zen and gave him a cold snort. A young man in a purple robe stood beside Saint Vianna. He must be something, Zen thought as he carefully scanned the man in the purple robe. His eyes were so sharp that he suddenly noticed an 8 diagrams, sewn with black thread, on the man's sleeve. He seems to be from Friend's clan, thought Zen. As soon as the man in the purple robe saw Zen, he stomped toward him, as if he was going to eat him alive. Are you the man who killed my brother? The man's aura was astonishing. His questioning was like a flash flood, slapping Zen hard. Zen, however, didn't move. He stared calmly at the man and said, "So what? Since you killed my brother, you have to die. I want you and your family to be buried with my brother," the man said fiercely. Zen smiled, pointed at him, and said, "Since you say so, why don't you kill me now? Are you afraid of me? You think I would not dare to kill you? Taking your life is no complicated feat." The man's life vitality rose from the top of his head and became a beam of colorful light. Before he was about to attack Zen, he was stopped by a voice. "Angelo, stop it, you can't do that in front of so many elders." An old man in a black hat was now standing behind Friend's brother. Today, 6 of the 10 saints at Cloud Sect had come to the opening trial. So, everything had to be done by the rules. The old man in the black hat standing behind Angelo Zug was Saint Leonard, one of the 10 saints at Cloud Sect. Angelo Zug was Saint Leonard's personal disciple. Looking at Zen who was standing in the middle of the commandment hall, Saint Vianna said, "Now that he is here we should start the trial." The saints who sat next to Saint Vianna nodded. Cloud Sect's opening trial could only be started in the presence of 6 saints. In addition to the 6 saints, several members of the Zug clan were present as well. All members of the Zug clan were staring at Zen fiercely just like Angelo. They all wanted to kill Zen where he stood. If the saints weren't here, they would have rushed at Zen and hacked him to death. Zen looked around, but he didn't see Aura. The opening trial was proposed by Aura. Why isn't she here today? Zen thought doubtfully. When Zen's eyes met Saint Vianna's, a wicked smile grew on the saint's face. "Your master Su may not be able to come today. She can't come. What did you do to her?" Zen didn't care about whether or not Aura would come to the trial. He wanted to know whether she was safe. Now that these people dared to hurt his little sister, they were probably giving Aura a hard time as well. Although Aura's status was special and high, he knew these people didn't care about that at all. "What can I do to her?" Saint Vianna shook his head, and said, "She knows you're going to lose this opening trial. And she cannot do anything about it. So she's not coming." When Zen heard Saint Vianna's words, he breathed a sigh of relief and thought, it seems that he doesn't know why Aura is absent today. Even now, Zen believed in Aura. Now that she had made him a promise and asked for an opening trial, she must have found a way to save him. If she weren't sure, a smart person like her would never make such a fuss. The shadow on the corona outside the hall pointed to the noon. "Now that it's noon," said an old man in a purple hat, "let's begin the trial." In fact, several saints felt that this trial was a bit of a storm in a teacup because previous trials were aimed at particularly important disciples in Cloud Sect, such as the personal disciples or the top 10 inner disciples. However, this trial was being held for an unknown outer disciple. Had it not been for Aura's insistence, they would not have agreed to the trial. However, the saints were surprised to learn that Zen had killed Fren, the 3rd son of the Zug clan. These saints did not think that Fren was powerful, but they were confused about the whole matter. Zen had only reached the 1st grade of the nature level, while Fren was close to the consummation of the nature level. The gap between them was enormous. Then how could this boy kill Fren? The saints were thinking, if this little guy, Zen, really killed Fren using only his strength, then he's a genius. We haven't seen someone like that in a century. He must have a bright future. Unfortunately, if he is as bloodthirsty as Saint Vianna has said, then we should get rid of him as soon as possible. Something similar had happened at Cloud Sect before. 79 years ago, there was a genius, Subin, at Cloud Sect. 9 years after entering Cloud Sect, he broke through the illuminating soul realm and gained the best theurgy in the world. He was invincible in the illuminating soul realm. In the end, however, Subin betrayed Cloud Sect and became its sworn enemy. He wandered through the eastern region, massacring the disciples of Cloud Sect. Cloud Sect had to join forces with the Burning Sky Empire to deal with Subin. They had sent dozens of elite disciples to kill Subin. In the end, Cloud Sect killed Subin at the expense of 3 saints. After that, Cloud Sect laid down a rule that placed disciples, moral characters above all, even their talent. They didn't want to train people who were gifted but harbored evil intentions, because it ran counter to the purpose of Cloud Sect. Saint Zara, who wore a purple hat, slapped the square wood, and a formless curtain of purple light diffused through it. When people were bathed in the purple light, they immediately felt calm. This was the peculiar effect of Saint Zara's life vitality. Zen, tell me, did you kill Friend with your sword in Commandment Hall? Asked Saint Zara calmly. His voice was not loud, but it carried an inexplicable authority. Even though he was being questioned, Zen felt very calm. Since Saint Zara was willing to question him rather than just throw a charge at him, Zen had a chance to defend himself. Zen nodded and said, yes. After hearing Zen confess his crime so directly, several saints looked at each other in disbelief and thought, why does he admit that he killed Friend so openly? Doesn't he know the rules of Cloud Sect? If he is proved to be a killer, then no one in the world can save him. Saint Vianna smirked and said, now that you have confessed, there is no need for us to continue questioning you. If you kill someone, you must pay for your actions. Yes, Saint Vianna is right, you should pay for your sins. That's the rule, the members of Zug clan echoed.